I recorded the.
Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Tip.
Oh, it's okay.
Just wanted to make a real quick announcement that we had moved our pre-meeting to the conference or meeting room behind us tonight because of the temperature of the room, where we usually have our pre-meeting. So if that was,
Clarify ambient temperature, it wasn't the temperature from us.
oh, yeah, right, there we go. Yeah, the temperature of the room, not the temperature of the people. And there we go. But that's a good sign because that shows everybody, I hope, that we care and are very passionate about what we do. So I'll just say thanks to all the planning commissioners on that note for everything that they put into this. The next item on our agenda is the roll call. Looks like everybody made it tonight. We have some important items on the agenda, so again, very happy that everybody's able to join us, as well as people that are joining us here from the public. We have the minutes to approve for February 11th and March 11th. And in the pre-meeting, we didn't have any discrepancies on those minutes, so I'll go ahead and approve those minutes for the record. And then we'll get into the administrative items. We have 3 administrative items. First item is item 2.1 LBW 022025, which is consideration and action on a request for preliminary subdivision approval of Winston Park subdivision phases 2 and 3. Proposal to redevelop the open space parcel with 53 single family lots. And on that note, Director Grover.
Thank you, Chair. This is an administrative item. Just for the record, this item was looked at. This was open space, and Felix will touch a little bit more on this, but it went before the public and was noticed to have an amendment to that open space. And so notices and everything were done properly on that. It went before the planning commission and then went before the county commission. And Felix will go into a little bit of detail on that. But as an administrative item, which this is, you'll just be looking at how it's meeting the development agreement and how it's meeting the subdivision ordinance. And if it is, then you're obligated to approve the item. And no public comment is required on this.
Thank you. Felix.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. It's great to be presenting for you in this building and on this wonderful spring day. And we have the developer here with us, Mr. Wade Rumsey. And this is a proposal for a request for preliminary subdivision approval, where he would like to complete this portion, this development with phases 2 and 3. So this aerial image that I have up on the screen, you can see Alder Court, Shell Grove, and Stanmore. Those are those local neighborhood roads that are complete, built, constructed. That's actually phase 1. And then phases 2 and 3, we'll work through these slides and show you how they are connected and how what is taking place here today is cohesive with the existing phase 1 development. So the Winston Park phases 2 and 3 is area that was recently zoned R115. And this location there, 3701 West, 1800 South. 1800 South is proposed to be a major corridor, 80 feet right of way. And so the appropriate right of way dedication is going to take place along this entire frontage of this development. And we're going to work through a few slides here that show the preliminary plat. We'll touch on some topics of road connectivity, pathway connectivity, and we'll also quickly brief on the development agreement, some of the conditions within there. And so here we have an image from the development agreement. So this is helpful. I thought this would be helpful to see, making some comparisons to what the plan was approved in the development agreement compared to what we have before you for preliminary subdivision approval. And so one thing I'd like to note is that when this proposal came through to redevelop this open space, it was the recommendation that this entire phase, all the phases for this development were zoned R115. That way, the owner would be able to justify using that density that is available for the R115 zone. And because the original proposal was designed as a planned residential unit development with open space. And so what was originally platted as open space is this image here, which would now be occupied largely by some duplexes and also some single family lots. And so you can see how the continuation of the roadway system, it aligns well with the existing phase one. And you can also see that they've accounted for those minimum distances for pathway connections to adjacent properties. And so at the time when neighboring property does decide to develop, that the opportunity for that road connection is there, it exists. There is also, if you look at on the Collingswood Drive, how it terminates at a cul-de-sac. That's a design element that was put into place due to the proximity of 1800 South Street and also the neighboring property to the east of that cul-de-sac is developed, and it does contain a home at this point. So there's a blown up image that shows the 30-foot pathway. So if the opportunity arises, the 30-foot pathway would be connecting to that adjacent property to the east. And going to this slide here, this is the development plan for preliminary. And we can see that they've split it into two phases here. So phase 3 is phase 2 is the duplexes on the east, on the west side, and the phase 3 is the single family lots. And here is another image showing the phasing plan, a little more clarity where you can see how they've outlined it. And this is also helpful. I'd like to bring this up also to show you some of the measures that the developer took in order to satisfy the fire requirements. So you can see on the west edge of those duplex lots that you have a road. It would be a compacted road base road, something that the fire district requested for emergency access, just in case. And see here, going into here. So here we have the landscape plan. And it does show that there are some street trees as well as the sidewalks and the pathway stubs. And I will mention that there are some minor revisions that will need to be made. It looks like their placement of trees will need to be adjusted slightly, but overall, I think this meets the intent of the landscape plan. And we can also see that they have some watering details there, which that's part of what the development agreement requested, was that their landscape plans show you what type of watering systems are reused or will be used. And some of the standards to consider at this phase of the approval is this preliminary subdivision plat requirements, and also the zoning standards, which is that R115 zoning standards, and the roadway connectivity, and the zoning development agreement that we have in place. And moving on to staff's recommendations, is that staff recommends preliminary approval of the, I'm sorry, I didn't change that wording there, of the Winston Park subdivision, phases 2 and 3, based on the conditions here we have. And I want to make sure that my conditions of approval are clear. So I'm just going to go straight to the report for those 7 conditions. So the first condition, Taylor West Weaver Water District provide capacity or final will serve before final approval from the planning division. Similar requirement for the Hooper Irrigation Company. And the proof of satisfactory contribution toward the Parks District. And also the civil drawings shall include a landscape plan that shows the landscape material and method of irrigation for the parking strips and the detention basins. And going on to the next page. For the rest of these conditions is that the developer shall compliance with the recorded development agreement. And the developer is required to include a geotechnical study for the home site areas and roadway areas to be reviewed with the construction drawings prior to recording the plat. Now, this condition right here about the geotech is mainly coming from the engineers. They wanted to see a little bit more work done just to be sure, because there was some fill that was imported. And they want to make sure that imported fill is still, you know, is stable and able for the roadways and also for home placement. And so, and also that seventh one, that the civil drawings will comply with Weaver County engineering requirements. So that wraps up the presentation. And any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for staff on this item?
I just noticed, in the landscape plan, trying to find it, that's where you can best see where the roads are laid out. What width are those roads? Are they all private or public? Oh, it says public, okay, except for the patio homes, so there's no additional parking for the patio homes other than the driveways?
So that would be the driveways and the garages.
Yeah, well, it says patio home area.
Yeah, go patio homes.
That just concerns me a little, that just the amount of parking available to them.
Limited amount of parking, yeah.
So I don't know if there's a way they could add a few stalls somewhere for that area in particular. I guess they could fit, well, no, they can't fit any on the road. It would just be two in the driveway. And otherwise, they can park on the streets, I guess, if they're from outside the community.
What does the ordinance say on that? Is it 2 vehicles per unit?
Yeah, that's the minimum, yeah, 2 vehicles.
Felix, on that same page where we show the 10-foot pedestrian walkway, what is that strip? Right there, that's adjacent to the walkway, is that, I mean. Is that where you mentioned that there's going to be a compacted road base
Oh,
access right there?
we're talking, okay, let me see here. Yes. So I'm gonna move my mouse over to hopefully I can see it.
Yeah, right there,
So
yeah.
this thing, yeah.
Okay, so what's the rest of that strip? I get that ties the driveways together, but what's the rest of that strip?
You mean down here,
Yeah,
The
well,
landscape plan.
that would be your asphalt. That would be your pathway.
okay, but go to your left of that whole
Oh,
strip.
space here.
Right, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
That one, that's a good point. Let's check the landscape plan. Doesn't quite give us some clarity on that. See,
Because I don't know how wide that is, and I don't know what the ownership is of that, but possibly that could become something.
Yeah, parking, it
Yeah.
does say it's part of the storm drain easement for Weaver County, so I guess that
Maybe it's-
compacted gravel
Okay, yeah.
path.
Yeah.
It's for fire and for access to the, well, it says. Yeah, maintained by the HOA, but owned by Weaver County, so I guess it's just access to get
Oh,
to the, detention pond.
That's what it looks
Besides,
like.
what you were, Andrew's talking about, the jewelry square.
But yeah, the dots.
It's all.
Yeah, so that could fit, I guess people can park back there.
My bigger concern is why isn't it landscaped? Why are we leaving that chunk out?
Well, that's kind of what I was getting to too, is that just gonna become kind of a no man's, nobody cares about area?
I mean, I've had heartache with the compacted road base even when we approved phase one in this and. I mean, it's a weed patch back there, just like what we've seen with phase one, it's a weed patch.
Yeah, compacted road base doesn't mean no weeds.
Right? I mean, I think it. Excuse me, for one, the onus of changing this to the homeowners that bought in that, not thinking they were getting anything in their backyard, they should get more than a weed patch. In addition, you know what I mean, more than a weed patch. I think that landscape should cover all the way down to that whole strip as well, just like for sure how they're supposed to landscape the. I think the development agreement says all that detention area. I remember.
Yeah, maintained by HOA, it says something here.
But I think the development agreement says that's all gotta be landscaped.
It's a good observation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd probably spell that out as an additional condition.
And I got another question on this one, I mean, we've seen phase one go in, it's, you know, they've been building there for well over a year. And. I know, and maybe this is more for me, and we've done it on previous subdivisions where we can stipulate after one phase, we want to see some of that landscaping, correct? Yeah. I think that we need to put a condition on this that when the first phase of this goes in, whether it's 2 or 3, that landscaping and that detention pond and that open space needs to be installed because they haven't done it yet. With the existing phase that's in there.
Yeah, and if that landscaping becomes an area for parking, if that can be worked into it, so be it. You know, I mean, I don't want it just to be a free for all back there, but something that's adequate and nice, I mean, no problem. But something needs to be done with that area to keep it maintained. Yeah.
I agree.
Asphalt and parking, there we go.
Better than weeds.
Better than weeds. I just know those patio homes, I've lived in a patio home with a lot of retired neighbors, and Sunday evening parking is limited. Everyone has their family, and so.
Anything else, Commissioner? Okay. Any further? No further comments or questions for staff?
What's that, Chair?
Go ahead.
So the additional making the condition that they landscape that area, what was the second one we talked about?
Finishing this in the.
Oh, that's right, I brought it up, man.
Yeah, that was your idea.
Are we wanting landscaping or are we wanting that to be parking? I'm just trying to visualize it here. If it was parking, it's a little dead end area, right? Because this is a pedestrian walkway here to the south. So what are we suggesting or what are we asking for?
I think we may want to work with engineering on that because if some of that is detention, we don't want any of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If it needs to be left with no improvement for parking, it needs to be at least landscaped. Can we have that as a condition? Okay.
Definitely.
Perfect. Anything else, commissioners? Thanks, Felix. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any deliberation? Okay. And then I will ask for a motion on item number 2.1 LBW 022025.
I'll make a motion for the forward positive recommendation. For preliminary approval of subdivision phases 2 and 3 consisting of 53 feet, single family lots. This recommendation is based on all the agency review requirements and the following conditions. Final will serve from Taylor West Weaver Water before final approval of planning division. Final will serve from Hooper Irrigation before final recommendation of planning division. Proof of satisfactory contribution towards parks and open space as specified in the development agreement must be given before each phase is recorded. The civil drawing shall include a landscape plan that shows landscape materials and methods for irrigation for park strips and detention basins. Developer is required to show compliance with the record in the development agreement, recorded development agreement, sorry. The developer is required to include a geotechnical study for home site areas and roadway areas to be reviewed with the construction drawings prior to recording the final plat. The civil drawing shall comply with Weaver County engineering. Additional requirements being number 8, include landscape area. Exclude landscaping in area behind Alder Court cul-de-sac in the drainage and open space easement or parking in that area for those duplexes. All detention and open space landscaping must be completed with the first phase that's installed. So I'll clarify that either phases 2 or 3, whichever one goes first. The landscaping on those open spaces and detention need to go in at that time. And then last 9, all other applicable review agencies approvals as well. And that's based on the findings. Winston Park phase 2 and 3 confirms with the West Central Weaver general plan. The lot areas and width designs are compatible with the concept in the development agreement. The proposal will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. And the proposal will not deteriorate the environment of the general area or negatively impact surrounding property. That was a lot.
Thank you. That was a lot. Okay, I have a motion. I'll ask for a second.
I'll second.
I have a motion in a second. I have a vote. Commissioner Claus,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
Commissioner Wicker,
Aye.
Commissioner Novell. Aye. Commissioner Andriotti.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda tonight is item 3.1, May 2025-01. Discussion on a legislative application to rezone 31.4 acres of land generally known as the Bitton Dee rezone, located at approximately 601 south, 3600 west, from the A1 zone to R115 zone. Yes, Director.
Thank you, Chair. As you look at this is a legislative item. You'll be forwarding a recommendation, either positive or negative, to the county commission. And they will be the final say, but tonight you will be deliberating on making that recommendation, but you'll also have a public hearing. You will close that public hearing with a motion. Actually, this one was not. We already had that on this one. So you'll just deliberate on that and then proceed, because we already had that.
Thank you, Director. Felix.
Yes, and thank you, I'm back, so I never left. So I'll just jump right into this one. So we, as mentioned, we have gone over this several times, and the last time we met was March 11th for this very item. It was more of a public hearing, more formal setting. Tonight's is more of a discussion. I'd also like to point out some of the minor changes and adjustments that we made to satisfy the planning commission requirements, as well as just to make sure we have the best amount of information out there on the report and in the development agreement. And so, as you can see, the introduction mentions the 31 acres. They actually excluded a little bit of property with so that the current proposal is the 30.65. Turns out that Herrick, Mr. Herrick, was not interested in participating with this rezone after all, and so his property fronts on 3600. So you can see there's a little cutout there of 3600. Just so that's on the record. And some of the things, again, we'll just run through just a quick recap of what we discussed last meeting. And I'll make sure to make it clear some of the changes and adjustments that we've made. As far as the road alignments, staff's recommendations and planning commission recommendations to help, really help kind of satisfy the connectivity requirements and the and so here I've done a little bit of markup. So we have here showing a connectivity plan. This is really useful because it shows some of the pathway alignments as far as, you know, taking those recommendations from our general plan and lining them up with what the developers was considered with their plan. And some of the tweaks that we have concluded is that we'd like to see a 10-foot pathway along this, so along this 66-foot this road that runs east-west direction. On this, we'd like to have a 10-foot pathway on the south side. And this road is also a 66-foot right of way, just to make sure that's very clear. And then we'd also like to have that pathway not just extending from the development on 4100 south to the 900 south. We'd like to see that pathway from that a couple lots north of this. So you can see this yellow arrow on the west edge of this development. So on 4100 West Street, where my cursor is, you may be able to see that. Basically from this point south, we'd like to see those, you know, asphalt and also the 10-foot, you know, right of way or 10-foot pathway improvements. And again, this particular plan does not show that little cutout, but I think for just all intents and purposes, it clearly displays some of the pathways and roadways throughout. And so here is the concept plan that, let's see, we actually have a more recent plan, but this the most recent plan is in your staff report. And so I would recommend just taking a look at that one and see what page that's. So that's actually like 3 or 4 pages in. But as far as the roadway alignments, nothing has changed. The pathway as well is very, very consistent with this plan. And here is an image of the general plan future land use map. And you can see this area in red, shows the location of this proposal. And here is the future streets and transit, showing a little more detail as far as the roads and pathways. So there also is some revisions that I'd like to make sure is clear in the development agreement on page 26. And it's actually 8.5 and 8.1. And that's where you're going to get into some of the details regarding these roadway improvements. That these are on-site improvements, and then you also have some off-site improvements. So what was pointed out in those previous slides as far as, you know, pathways along 4100 and asphalt improvements on 3600. This is the language that would be used in the development. So here's some of the considerations that we recommend including with your recommendation. That the standards from the development agreement are included with your recommendation. And the streets and pathway layout illustrated in the concept line sufficient for the connectivity standards of the county code. And condition 3, the developer will make the necessary asphalt improvements and install a street adjacent pathway on 41 West that will connect with the planned pathway running along south. Again, this particular one, it's described in more detail in the development agreement. And then number 4, the developer will make the necessary asphalt improvements to 3600 West Street along the development frontage, then southward to 725 South Street. And that's that 725 South Street, that's the entrance into the Riverbend cluster subdivision. And then condition 5, this is talking about that east-west neighborhood collector that used to be 66 feet with a 10-foot pathway on the south side of the street. So that's a quick recap. Other than that, everything has remained the same. Again, the development agreement is pretty well refined at this point. I don't expect any major changes from here going forward. But we also like to take, if you have any recommendations, we could add more detail or maybe some changes to the development agreement to make some of that language a little more clear. So yeah, I appreciate your time. That's it.
Questions?
Packet doesn't seem to have number 5. Were you gonna say that?
No. I got more questions on the trails here. So looking through in, excuse me, in 8.9.2 in the development agreement under pathway improvements. I guess my question is, I've had a conversation with Hooper Irrigation and no one's approached Hooper Irrigation, at least speaking with their president, about building these pathways on their, essentially through their easements. A lot of times they don't own the property, it's just an easement they have through there. And they have some concern with us putting these pathways on top of existing canals and stuff like that. They're not saying they're against them being there, they just want to be part of the conversation if we're gonna spell out and require pathways to go in these areas. And so along with that, I guess I don't see it in the development agreement that we spell out. Are these adjacent to the canals along there? Are they on top of? Where's the placement? I mean, I think that's a key detail of what we need to specify here in this agreement.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good observation. I haven't had a chance to speak with the Hooper Irrigation with this specific rezone. And if you look at it as more of a conceptual at this phase, typically when we get down to the subdivision phase, when we're actually going to install some improvements, their cooperation is crucial and included. It is part of the review process during the subdivision phase.
I guess my concern, I just would like to see it locked in the agreement. Because that's what holds the teeth here, right, is what's in this development agreement is my concern. I get that the improvement side of it, you know, how they're gonna build it and what they are. And the development agreement's pretty good with that. You know, you look in attachment E in here and it's got the nice cross section and it spells out what has to be there, you know, size of rock and different things. And so I'm not necessarily concerned with what's being built, it's where it's being built. And are we going adjacent? Are we going on top of? And I feel in this particular one, we're missing a connection here as well. Where that street C, or I can't tell, that cul-de-sac stubs down in there. We've got the canal that runs along that whole southern boundary right there as well. And why aren't we calling, no, down off the cul-de-sac?
Are we talking about here?
Down here, why aren't we spelling out the trail along there? Because that's one of our bigger trail connections for the general plan, is that following that whole segment of the canal. And
And that portion of it going west actually will connect, take you clear to 4,700. 4,700.
Eventually, right? And so
Yes.
I feel we're missing it there, you know, we got the trail connection coming off the street down to it, but it's going dead ended and we're not tying it in.
Yes.
I think that portion needs to be in here as a trail as well.
On the other side of the road then, so it can connect, or on the other side of the county, you mean like, let's pull it here, so we can pull it across to there.
This one's got there for that trail, but I think across there, we need to specify a trail needs to be along there as well.
But it probably should connect to this one and even need a bridge if it's on that side, so maybe move it to the west side.
Yeah.
Anyway,
You could tie that all together right there. That canal's all piped through there, right? But that was one of the concerns of hooper irrigation is a lot of times, you know, that pipe was put in a long time ago and we don't know if it can withstand, you know, the construction of putting an asphalt trail on top of it. So that's why I'd like to see it go adjacent to it. Similar to what we did with, is it Windmill 2 or something like that? We had them put the trail adjacent to it on their property, the developer's property, and I think we need to do the same thing here.
That's what I was gonna say. I think if you just give your recommendation, say if we can't get it in the easement, then get it on the developer side. And then what we can do from there, once we get to plating, like Felix said, at least we have at least do this much. And so we've got something that we can hold their feet to the fire, and if it turns out that it's unreasonable to even try for whatever reason, the irrigation company's not ready, or there's a slough or whatever it is, then, you know, we could work out some other arrangement with them at that time. The other thing I wanted to make sure you guys knew, but one of the reasons we haven't reached out to Hooper Irrigation is because we're really hoping that we can get a group of developers to do that. In fact, there are 2 developers in the room right now that we have asked to reach out to them. But even more than that, to work together to reach out to them, because I think if there's a critical mass, there's a good conversation that can happen, because there are a lot of pathways planned either within or right immediately adjacent to some of these canals and ditches. So if that conversation doesn't happen, it's one that we're willing to hold together, time pending, obviously. And then I agree with you on that southern one. I think that's one we just, I missed it when I reviewed the staff report. So that definitely needs to be there. It'd be great if we could work with the applicant to get it all the way back to 4100. Because I don't see any other development really happening adjacent to it unless somebody squeezes another lot or two in there. So maybe we can find a way to make that worthwhile to the applicant. All of these pathways are on our impact fee facilities plan as well. So sometimes it's gonna look like we're getting little bits and pieces of the pathway from a developer. And every once in a while, we will just get little bits and pieces, but we plan on using impact fees to fill in the gap. For example, down on 1800 South, right immediately adjacent to Stagecoach. The developer will be building that pathway along 1800 South. We know that there's sidewalk 500, 600, 700 feet away. Actually, I think it's close to 1300 feet away. Working with engineering right now to actually put it in a pathway to connect those gaps. So slowly we'll start to see that pathway configuration. Any questions on pathways for me?
No, thanks, Charlie. And I agree. I think it's more on the onus of the developer to bring this to the table. It shouldn't be the county, but yeah, I hope that conversation moves forward.
We can't make assumptions. We can't make assumptions that everything's gonna work just because they're natural ways and good places for paths. And they are. And I think, to Brendan's point earlier, I think that the water companies, the canal companies are willing to work. I don't think that's a problem. I just think we need to know where they're at.
Yeah, and I like, in some of our development agreements, we actually have, it says, put it on your property, on the edge, or put it in the canal easement, whichever one works best. And most of the time, they're gonna try, if the canal company will work with them and it's not super costly, they'll try and get it out of their property, because then they can sell the property for more, because it's got square footage.
Anything else, Commissioner?
I like Charlie's point there. I think we need to make the condition that they gotta tie that pathway into 4100, otherwise it's not gonna go anywhere.
On the one on the south.
On this one that I would like to add on the south there, that it ties in all the way to 4100.
like if they can get it on the easement, because otherwise they won't have the land to do it.
They're gonna have to find land, you know, get land to widen roads and other things too. I think it needs to tie in, otherwise it's gonna be a dead end for a long time.
But I just would be worried about holding up the whole development if they aren't able to purchase it, if the landowners aren't.
They don't have to purchase, they can use their own land, right?
Well, they don't own it all the way to
There's a
there.
chunk
They're talking about right here, this leg right here at the end.
Oh,
So I just have, it would be difficult for me to make a condition that requires them to acquire land that they don't. Or use land they don't own. I mean, easements, if they can make that happen.
he's shaking his head that he can acquire it, so. Just kidding.
I'd like to see it happen, but, the stretch, if the easement, if it doesn't work with the easement. I'm not sure how to state it to make it have teeth, but not,
It's no different than what we put on other ones with requiring them to widen a section of road, just like we did on Martini one with. They've got to widen 1400 all the way to 35, and they're gonna have to acquire some right of way to do it. And we put that condition on that one. I feel this one's not different. It's a connection, right?
I think it's a connection, but I agree with Sarah, it's not a major connection, I feel like it would be fair to hold them up on that part, if it was a road, yeah, but where it's a trail system. It's as important. Personally.
I think a connection should be made there. I do.
Definitely.
And I think that, you know, I don't know if it could be conditioned to work with the canal company to make something work there. That's, you know, I can't make motions, so that's.
I don't think it's a canal company. And they only have an easement. You'd have to worry about the person who owns it, and I think that splits a field in two,
Looks like it has a.
so that'd be kind
somewhat
of
of a road.
it has a road right there right now.
Well,
That's the
that's the canal.
Right, like now, yeah, they have an easement road, so.
But the canal doesn't go straight down to 4100. If you notice, it tails off, it goes northwest, that's down before it crosses 4100.
So, I mean, we could state something that they make a good faith effort to connect to 4100.
I'm a connection or a no, so.
I mean, that statement, like you say, has no teeth, though.
No,
I don't disagree, like,
Yeah.
it's my suggestion, but.
we have a lot of no teeth stuff everywhere in our code. It's just,
Well, see,
just
that's,
so you know, if you don't make a good faith effort, we're not so excited to make a good faith effort next time you bring a development to us,
that's
so.
the good part that we have with this development agreement, right? What they're asking for additional density from what's there. We're asking for additional essentially amenities for the community. For that additional density they're getting, so it's in my eyes, it's a 1-to-1, right? We do have teeth in this, but this is the only time we have teeth to do something like that is when that ask is in front of us. And if we don't do it now, we lose the opportunity, so.
The roads are a little bit different than pathways in that I mean, not that a developer could use eminent domain, but you can't do that for a pathway ever, not even the city can do that. So. Or the county can't do that, as far as I understand it, and so the priority is a little different for a road versus a trail, and so handing that off to a developer. That's, I guess, from like road versus trail.
Well, my struggle here is, in our work session last week, didn't we talk about how many people use trails and how trails are the new thing and how important trails are? I think we had a long conversation on when we met with Westbridge in our last meeting, so that's where I'm hanging up here. That's a key connection that we're gonna have, and it's gonna be challenging to not get it.
Liam, I need a clarification. Commissioner McCormick brought up a good point. So if that property is not owned by the canal company, but they do have a right of way or an easement through it, do they control what can go along with it on anything that they have an easement on?
It depends on the language of the easement.
So there it is.
Yeah, all depends.
More than likely, I would assume no, to maintain their canal system through there. It's not gonna grant free access for.
Any owner could have gated it one time, so this wouldn't work very well for a pass.
Cause there's really not room to squeeze that in, and I think that lot, I don't know what the width of that lot is, it's just on the north side of the canal right there. I don't know how. I don't know how that, you know, how, if there's enough width on that lot to be able to buy a right of way for that on that side. Is it possible for you to bring that up on Gizmo?
Yeah, that's, yeah, I'm gonna pull away from that one and go
That's what I'm looking at right now.
to the gizmo map here.
That's surprising, Hooper Irrigation actually does own a chunk of ground back into the one that can, it's not just an easement.
You know, it's kind of spotty on those canal companies. They do own just land under those canals.
Yeah, if you look back there where Felix's mouse is, that's actually owned by Hooper Irrigation.
Yeah, can you,
So there's, from what they own, there's not a very big chunk of area right there to tie that together. One scrapes. People that own that property.
Is it being used for anything for weeds right now? Oh, valuable tree.
It's part of the back's farmed with the rest of the piece of property that the developer has in the proposal. And the front piece from the canal overs. Screwed, nothing much.
There's not a dwelling on that parcel.
I don't think you could build on it, but
I don't think it can either, no.
I don't know, I think that needs to be a condition if they tie that together.
So who's got the piece on that lot? Is it one continuous piece over the canal?
yes, so this little strip here looks to be.
Yeah, go back up here to where that tail comes down on the south side.
Okay, we're talking about this piece here?
That's all one piece, right?
Yeah, let me go to the configuration. Look at the jogs back, the angle from this.
Oh, right there, okay,
Back.
yeah, yeah.
There definitely is a good opportunity, even if, I mean, the plan for the Bitton Herrick and would basically stub to this point further south. And if the football company is willing to place something along this corridor, that would be ideal.
It is fairly close.
Yeah, it is very close. I mean, just looking at the southern boundary, I think we probably can't rely too much on this imagery with the parcel boundaries, but you know, I think that's something that we could look at in further detail to see, you know, what's the proximity of this Bitton Herrick rezone, that line, that boundary to the you know, to the existing travel surface. Have some cooperation with the district for that, for the placement on that.
Commissioners, anything else for staff?
I don't necessarily have anything for Felix, but just a clarifying question for either you or Rick or Liam, but if, what would be best in this scenario for the applicant, would it be best to, rather than making a motion that requires this, would it be better to table it so that they could try to acquire this piece, or would it be better to just include it in our motion now? maybe that's a,
Yeah, I would probably, you could do either or, but, you know, if you really want this, you should include it in your motion or table and have it addressed. I think it's easy at this stage of the game to require that, instead of have a language, but have a shall. Cause this is really the only time you have that T, like Britt mentioned, to get that in. So, yeah, and, you know, he is asking for a lot on this, but he's also doing some good things with this as far as connectivity as well, so. You know, that's a determination, but you can go either way on that.
Well, one last point, it'll tie it into that trail, well, we're requiring a 10-foot pathway along that east side of 4100. So it'll tie it right into that pathway along 4100 as well.
Felix, I noticed in our, well, at least in the packet that I have right here, we only have 4, recommendations, not the 5th recommendation. Can you go back to your recommendation?
Oh, yes.
Does anyone have it?
I'm looking. Hey.
Probably not in that report.
Okay.
We can definitely.
Aside from the canal easement, how far would you say the connection is at the end? I mean, we didn't take a measurement, but that isn't owned by the canal.
Bring this up, Felix.
That would be.
I'm sorry.
Subdivision.
Okay, sure. From the report or from the,
Yeah, from the report is fine.
okay,
the newest one, right?
Whatever one, I think you already had it on the screen once, so whatever one you have.
well, I do have a concept on the, you know, I'll bring it up on the report as well.
Yeah, let's start there. So go with me with the cursor here, Felix. Come down here to the canal. Right before, right at the right where it intersects with the subdivision. So right here in the southeast corner on the west end of the subdivision. Right there. Okay, so what we're saying is we're gonna have a trail that comes along the canal going east of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what if we make a hard right, and now we're traveling west on the canal, we make a hard right and we go across the back of that property.
Yep.
Where that is.
Along here, along the south edge.
No, go, come back up to the intersection and go north along the edge of that. What if we go across there?
Yep.
And we make that our pathway and we come out over here on the road where we're gonna have a 10-foot pathway that will take us back down to 4100 west.
Yes.
There you can connect.
You can connect that there. That's a sort of, sort of a workaround for this where we have a little bit of a hard time doing something here on the south side. Extended going west. Does that work? And I guess, Charlie, I would ask, you as well. Are you seeing what I'm talking about?
I'd say do one or the other, and whichever one works out the best for your developer, I think.
Okay, so Sarah, you got a good enough beat on that to show that's right on the screen then.
So, let me say yes.
if this isn't possible, what is possible is connecting through here, so you can get to 4100. So if this is not possible, then these trails won't connect.
You come up here and you get on this trail and you come.
That's what
And that's what, I mean, Cammy's saying the same thing.
I mean, or it comes up and comes, you walk a little further. I mean, if you're getting your steps in, but if you walk just a little further, you know, that's all I'm saying.
And actually, that might be a little bit cleaner than going the other way.
I don't, general plan shows it on that trail.
You do.
I'm gonna stick hard to that. I wanna see it that way. And I'm just one vote, so.
Well, it does show.
I mean, we're following the general plan, giving the density. How are we not gonna follow the general plan and miss a trail connection?
Because they're not necessarily required to do trail connections on land they don't own. I mean, we can do it, we have the prerogative to do it, but how far does that go? As that parcel develops where the trail is supposed to be, then the trail can develop
So you're
there.
gonna miss out on the whole part of the trail there and at least on the southern part of the subdivision?
Well,
Not
I
making
could
it
say
fall
that,
under the dead end?
I could say that this one does need to go through, I can see asking them to go along the canal on what he owns. And then either making the connection on what he doesn't own, or connecting through this little stub to make sure it goes through the community and that there is an alternate pathway to get to 4100.
Around that step part of the west.
Yeah.
You're saying right here.
So
We're losing a vital part here. It's gonna be tough for the county or someone else to ever go in and get it. I think it needs to be required on this.
this portion right here.
Yep. I mean, it's a big ask, right? You're taking an area that could have all been acre lots. We all agree the smaller lots are probably better, but they're getting a lot of extra density here. And I don't think there's a lot of big asks in these, and trail and pathway connection, it's all part of the connectivity, right? Whether it's streets or trails, it's all part of it.
Well, the parks donation, that's another big ask that we do.
Well, we asked them to improve 4100 as well, right, for the width of his development.
All the way to 900.
That's just your substandard street. I mean, that's pretty well ordinance that says they gotta do that.
Mhm.
You got a road that now you're gonna add, what did Bill tell us back in the day? It's 10 trips per day per lot or something,
Isn't it going north as well? Are they improving it to the north as well, or just to the south?
just to the south.
Oh, okay, I was thinking to the north for some reason.
Yeah,
I
so,
thought we were coming through to here.
yeah, so basically, if you can see
About the
the,
width of their development,
yeah, this marker,
yeah.
the recommendation was from this
From
point
to the
south.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't know there was no
Yeah.
contention there at all, but we were talking about that. So that's why, for me, I'm like, kind of. Throw my bone where that was. Ask, I guess.
yeah, I mean, that's a good way to look at it, as well as this, you do have some alternate routes that could suffice for the time being until maybe we get some cooperation from the Hoover company to build a trail directly on that location that the general plan shows.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, I don't know if it's true or not, but I would assume that improving that road would be more costly than the trail, right? And asking that, I felt like it was not a huge ask, but it was an ask, right, to make it do that rather than go south, so. For me, I'm willing to compromise based off of that.
I think we can ask for the trail to either be located on the canal easement if feasible, or on their property as far as they own the property. And so I do
Yeah,
think it's
that's
important that we
That's
do every trail connection, but we've got dead end trails all throughout our community. We're always gonna have these dead ends until people own the land. And yes, they're putting some pressure to get those connections is nice. But where's the line?
James brought a compelling argument, not to change my mind, sorry. Because I agree, they're gonna be dead end trails, but those ones, you got bigger parcels, they're gonna eventually develop, they got stub roads into them. This parcel, they can't really do much with them. And I think it's gonna be, it's that, just looking on this particular situation and how this is laid out is why
Well,
I'm gonna stick my feet in it, I'm not moving on it.
I think it goes back to your initial argument, it's either us or the county that puts it in. at some point, right? Or it's, sorry, it's either the county or the developer now.
Correct. I think all the other trails we're adding in that area just adds a good connection, ties it all in, it's just, it's gotta go, it's gotta be in there.
Felix,
Yes, of
sorry, can you go back to number 5 that
course.
we don't have in front?
You ready, Chair?
I'm
We're
ready.
still talking.
No, I was waiting for. No, we're waiting. It's Felix's.
Just looking for this
Waiting for what?
5th.
Waiting for me to get up to speed on.
All right. Well, you're ready for a motion, I'll make the motion.
Folks, are we done deliberating? Okay. I'll ask for a motion on this item, please.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to forward a positive recommendation to the county commission for the Bitton Herrick rezone with the following conditions, which are intended to be incorporated into the development agreement for this project. Condition number 1, the standards from the development agreement are included with this recommendation. Condition number 2, the proposed street and pathway layout illustrated in the concept plan is sufficient to meet county connectivity code standards and code, with the addition of adding a trail along the southernmost boundary of this subdivision adjacent to the upper irrigation canal system connecting to 4100 West. The developer will make necessary roadway improvements and in street adjacent pathway on 4100 West that will connect with the planned pathway running along 900 South. The developer will make necessary roadway improvements to 3600 West Street along the development frontage, then southward to 725 South Street. And the developer, or excuse me, number 5, the east-west neighborhood collector street is designed and constructed as a 66-foot right of way with a 10-foot pathway built on the south side of the street. My recommendations are offered with the following findings. After consideration listed in this recommendation are applied through development agreement, and the proposal generally supports and is anticipated with the vision, goals, and objectives of the Western Weaver General Plan. The project is beneficial to the overall health, welfare, and safety of the community as provided in the Western Weaver General Plan. A negotiated development agreement is in the most reliable way for both the county and the applicant to realize mutual benefits.
Motion, I'll ask for a second.
I'll second it.
I have a motion in a second. Commissioner McCormick.
Abstain.
Can't.
No. Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti.
Aye.
Commissioner Clontz.
Nay.
Commissioner Edwards.
Aye.
Commissioner Vicker.
Hey.
Hope somebody's keeping track. Commissioner DeVille.
Nay.
I think we're all tied up. Gee, thank you, guys.
There's 7 of us.
Were you listening?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. This is a tough one, I gotta say. Aye. Motion, is passed 4-3. Yeah, we haven't had that forever.
I don't know if ever, it's
I
6
don't
or 7
either.
years I've been here.
That's a tough one. Anyway, very good. Thanks, commissioners. Thank you, Felix. Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda. The really big show, item number 3.2, ZMA 2024. That's why it's so big. It's all of 2024. A follow-up discussion, deliberation, and possible decision regarding the application for a rezone and associated development agreement for Westbridge Meadows development of master planned community that will rezone approximately 1,400 acres of property located within the area south of the Union Pacific Railroad, between the Weaver River and 7,500 West. The zone being proposed include a master plan development overlay zone, MPDOZ, and a variety of single-family dwelling R1, two-family dwelling R2, and multifamily dwelling R3 zones, as well as a form-based zone, FB mixed use, and open space zone O1. Director Grover.
You may recall, we've had many discussions on this. We had a public hearing a few weeks ago on this. They lasted for several hours. We have sent written comments to you, so you do have that. But at this time, you'll be looking at deliberating and making a motion, whether for or against this project. And that will go to the county commission. This item does not require another public hearing. There will be another public hearing at the county commission level, but not required at the planning commission level. You have taken many hours of public comment and also read comments been sent out to you. Mr. Earl will be presenting.
Mr. Viewer? We don't need the 3-hour version.
I was gonna say, I gave you a warning earlier, it's either 3 hours or nothing, your choice.
That's why I was throwing it back, not the 3-hour version.
I'm just gonna do this, how about this, any questions for me on the side of you?
Does anybody want any kind of a presentation? I'll ask the commissioners.
We've seen it enough.
Okay,
I just have one quick question, I guess, Charlie. Everything that's in here in our packet is the same as what we had in our last work session, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
One more question. Where did that originally go?
1800 south.
Okay.
I feel I won that one. Thanks, you guys. But now I got another one I wanna bring up, if you two are done with questions for a minute. No, Charlie, stay here. I wanna talk about buffers. So, in our last work session, county engineer come and sat and talk with us. Concern about the river, and I'm back and forth on that one. In the last week, I've done some reaching out with some folks at DNR. And we got a new letter. I don't know if you guys read the letter that came out yesterday. I don't know if when this first went to was proposed to DNR and, you know, it's not that I don't trust people, I wanna get the whole side of the story, right? But it was difficult and DNR had a hard line in the sand and they just wanted the 600 feet to go on the developer's property. Well, after doing some just a little bit of follow-up and reaching out to some folks, I think that's why we seen the new letter come out proposing potentially the 300-foot buffer on there.
I'm just the river, right, Brent?
No, the river, I'm fine with
Okay.
the wandering 100-foot based on the study done by just like we did with the other one. Based on the hydraulic study and, you know, it could be 100 or a minimum of 100, but it could go out wider in areas if needed. But correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, right now we have that, our buffer along the Ogden Bay is that corridor, right? And it's.
Yes.
Some feet.
On the northern boundary, so you've got kind of a Utah shaped cutout, so the higher east-west line, northern boundary, there's a 200-foot buffer there. As you look at say you're going around the state of Utah cutout, you head south, and then you head east again. Neither of those, edges have, buffers. One of them shows there might be a little bit of green space, maybe for a pathway, but, not a substantial buffer.
That's, yeah, so I would like to see a 300-foot buffer along there. Working with them, I don't wanna see losing any density, I don't feel that's. I don't think we should take the density of that acreage away from the developer, I think they can accommodate that in other areas within this project as large as it is. But within that 300-foot buffer on that southern part that's called out right now for that future byway, I think we still allow that to be built in that. At the time that byway's needed to be built. But so.
Are you staying in the buffer then?
Yeah, so basically extending that 200-foot one that's in here right now to 300, still allowing that roadway to go in, but continuing that buffer all the way around the property of that adjacent to
Thanks.
the.
And just that south part, just what's written in the agreement now.
No, all that whole entire, all of the that buffer, that 300-foot buffer would continue the entire. Boundary, I guess you would say.
Southern
Between,
boundary.
yeah,
Yeah.
of this proposal and,
Basically, buffering the entire DWR line.
yes, sir.
Can you show us a map of that?
Sure, really hoping to, not have to do presentation. Are you okay? Give me just a second.
While Charlie's doing that, I would just offer a little perspective on my own. Being somebody that avidly, constantly is using that wildlife management area, spends a lot of time out there. I would love to protect it as much as possible and be able to use it the way it is. However, I still strongly believe in every property owner having their own rights. And I don't feel like any neighbor should be coming and telling them that they can't use it for the purpose they intend to use it for, as long as it fits within our code and law. So that's my struggle with it. Yeah, I'd love to see it that way, and I know there's other property owners that border that as well, that have a lot less property. But to me, you're still a property owner, and just because you're a big property owner doesn't mean you should be sacrificing things that somebody else might not have to. If that makes any sense.
My trade-off I feel on that is, I mean, one of the things we look at, I mean, here, I'm gonna go back to, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record. This property is A2 mostly zoned, but still acre density, right? So you could put 1,400 homes on there. They're wanting to build 13,000. So there's one of my big trade-offs for it. The second is, I don't think we should subtract the density from them giving up that area. I think they accommodate that density in those doors in other areas within that subdivision. But one of the things I go back to is I can't remember, it's not in front of me now, it was in our packet last time, I didn't bring it, but I think it's condition number 6 when we look at a rezone. And that's how it affects neighboring properties. And this is a big effect on it, and that's why, you know, I think the line in the sand of, you know, first we were hearing that DWR wanted them to push the whole 600 foot on them. I don't feel that's right? Your neighboring property, so you gotta work with your neighbor to make this work. And I think that's why we've seen it come back and when with that most recent memo. Let's split it, right? Meet in the middle. I don't feel that it's taking away anything from the applicant, because they're still gonna get the same density. We don't have to subtract any of that. And it protects, you know, yeah, there's still gonna be 300 feet of unusable shooting area, I guess you could say, along that boundary on the WMA. But it's not 600, and it still, you know, hopefully allows for some usable space in that area. So I feel, in my eyes, that's the meet in the middle on it.
Question. This is for Liam. Can we talk to the developer this time and see what their feeling is?
Yeah, you're welcome, absolutely welcome to develop.
Let's ask that question, we might not have an argument per se.
Would someone representing the property like to come up and address a few questions?
Yep. I'm here, so any questions you got?
What's your thoughts on my proposals?
I think the conversation that we had last week in the work session, I think suffices. Right? Our stance, I mean, we talked about that at length. And I think that's, I think we'll just stick to that.
So that's a no.
That's a no,
Correct.
but
For-
I'm with Casey on that. I don't think we ought to take somebody else's.
For all the reasons that we talked about last week,
Well, that,
of which,
I also agree with Brent that, I mean, we gotta take into account what it does to our neighbors, for both ends. What does this do to our neighbors down the road that have smaller properties and want to be able to do something with it, and now they can't because their other neighbor was forced to comply with an existing wildlife management area? I don't think, we still have to look at that point too, because there are neighbors that are gonna be in that situation at some point in the future. So that would be my concern. On the opposite end, right, they'd be forced to not develop something that would make their land literally useless.
Well,
and
my thought on that is, we talked a lot last time about setting a precedence. I don't feel this is one bit of precedence. Each one of these applications we look at individually. And they come through us individually. And, you know, this is probably the first time, probably in the county's history, we've ever seen an application to take on this much of a project. I mean, this is a one-off, right? And kind of like I'm gonna be a broken record, just like I was on the last one. This is our opportunity to ensure that we're protecting this, not for what goes on today, for what goes on in 10 years, but this agreement basically will live in place for 50 years.
so,
And we can't take it back.
so if I can address the term you were using, which we talked about last week, again, at length, was the term protect, right? And that is what we've agreed to do. We've agreed to protect in the form of erecting this, this fence, specific type of fence, and ensuring that the WMA is protected, right, from various things entering or being able to cross over those property boundaries. So I agree with the term protect, and I think that's what we've agreed to do.
I think that we can't say that it won't set a precedence. Because push comes to shove, that's up to either a judge or a judge and jury. And we don't know what they're going to say. So I can't say that a precedence is impossible to be set by setting this in place. That being said, if this was on the flip side, and I was a property owner, and I wanted to inflict 600 feet on WMA, I wonder how open they would be to that. So as far as I'm concerned, you own your property line and you control what's on your side of the property line and they control what's on their side of the property line. And we're respectful of each other and we carry on and live out the rest of our duration together as partnership in sharing that boundary.
And I agree with that 100% if you were gonna develop this under acre density. They're asking for more. That's when we have the opportunity to ask for more. And every decision we make, we could set a precedent, right? The Martini one, when we wanted to widen the road going through there, are we asking it for every one of them? And are we setting a precedent there? I agree. It's gonna come down to a judge to say yes or no on that if it is. But I feel if we don't ask and try to protect now, we're not looking to the future. And so.
I agree. I agree with that to the point of, to be honest with you, I hope ones like what happened on the Martini property do set this. Because I think that that's how things should be. In this particular case, I think that property line represents a boundary.
And I agree, it is a boundary, but when someone's asking for more, that's when you have the opportunity, or we have the opportunity.
But, and I agree with that. I also think that they have been upfront and they've given what we've asked. And gone to great lengths. I'm not saying they killed themselves, that they've gone to great lengths to participate in the process and to stand behind what they've said they were going to do. And I just feel like they've lived up to their part of this market.
I got a question here, when you guys are done, what are we protecting? Where the buckshot goes?
Well,
I guess.
it's a great question, and I can answer that directly, because when we, like I said, last week, when we initially approached. The folks at the management group here with the WMA. We initially approached them, with some level of excitement of. Kind of I don't know, a sharing enhancement viewpoint, and then once we learned. Really what the operations are, what's involved and what's happening inside the WMA's boundaries. We then had a better understanding for, what their operation was. And so that's when we said, oh, okay, we now understand why the request is there to build what we consider a fence and do what we can do to protect the WMA, and specifically, the conversation was keeping, like literally, we talked about house cats, right? Keeping house cats out of the WMA, and then also the wildlife that's inside the WMA, and specifically, we talked about, deer or others, and so with those details, that's why we came to this agreement of a fence that could protect our domestic animals from getting in, and an fence that would also enable the protection of their wildlife not getting over. So anyway, hopefully that's.
Well, I guess I really struggle with this off and on, because we build a fence, and that's to protect against the house cat. Right across that fence is a raccoon. And to me, they're just as damaging or more damaging than house cat is, at least over home and more they are. So then, in my mind, we got the idea of, we're gonna be shooting, we can't shoot within, 600 feet without written permission from the property owner. Well, I guess as far as the wildlife that sits there, that 600 feet takes some pressure off those wildlife that's there. It's free movement for deer, bigger things can go down there. They go down there probably all times of the year, because the deer wind up on Little Mountain in the winter. So I'm thinking that I think that as far as the word protection in my mind, it doesn't, the fence doesn't for what you're doing it, but that 600-foot easement there, I'll call it for lack of a better word, where they're not gonna be shooting, I think helps the situation over there. And so in my mind, I'm thinking the fence line is the right place to have just put the fence in. They got their 600 feet over there where they're not gonna be shooting. You built your fence, keep the house cat out. I guess they got a raccoon trapper upriver someplace or something to keep the raccoons out. But for a long story short, I think that it's a nice project. I think that it's in the right place, because in my mind, acre lots don't fit there at all, just from the type of land we've had our discussions on the water. And the thing that I'll say about water, we know we got a water crisis, so why we keep digging the hole? We gotta step out of the hole, and I guess Thursday we're gonna talk about that. So. What?
Go ahead.
Well, so anyway, I'll get this wrapped up by Friday. So I'm thinking with all this rambling that I've done is, I guess in my mind, I don't like the idea of having my property encumbered, my own property, by somebody else. And so in my mind's eye, I think the fence should be the property line where you do your thing with the fence and they'll do their thing on what they have to do for the 600 feet.
And just, so obviously we agree, the fence is pointed out both in the application, so the package of, all the illustrative package and then also in the development, both sides, the type of fence and the fence gets erected, so.
Will you just tell us what that is, just real quick?
So the term,
Non-scalable.
yeah, the term is non-scalable and so you can't see through it, non-scalable. You know, we've got a couple of different ways we can erect that and most likely it will be, you know, a precast fence that probably has like a faux feature of a rock or something like that. But again, it'll be smooth enough in nature that, you know, it can't be scaled. You can't see through it. So
I'm gonna ask you a question and you can just say yes or no, or you don't know, that's fine. What would be a bigger detriment, the 300 feet or putting in that fence? To you financially, I guess, what I mean by detriment, like what would it be? Better for you to give up 300 feet, yeah, what's the better option for you as a developer?
the fence,
Fence, okay.
better option.
Couple of questions. So again, what is the total acreage of this project?
Total acreage is a little bit in excess of 1,400 acres, right? So.
Okay.
Touch over.
And I believe that the WMA has about 30,000 acres at this location. If you look online, does anyone look that up? That's what I remember. And so we are looking at a small property owner and a very large property owner. And for me, the fence line is it. And if the WMA, which raises money to protect wildlife, wants to have a buffer, I think they should buy it. Like they purchased the land that they already own.
Perfect opportunity, and we've learned this in the work session, and I'm gonna just give him the opportunity. You're willing to negotiate the sale of that easement as well, right?
We would,
Okay,
sure, certainly.
And if I remember correctly, we've discussed that the amount of units that you have is not the maximum amount you could receive. It is what is market driven for the development of this area.
Yeah.
So shifting that density, because I remember asking this before, as other things I'd rather see the density shifted for. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, that's right. It would be, it's just difficult to do that, right? To shift that density into another already higher density area. You know, you reach this point that, you know, we use the term of diminishing returns, and so. That's why I can quickly answer and say the fence is the better. And I, you know, maybe I'll just add to that by saying, you know, this is the product of, you know, 2+ years of land planning, right? Putting density where it makes the most sense. And so, you know, to shift may sound easy, but after, you know, 2+ years of you know, and a trash can full of trashed designs from previous, it becomes more and more difficult to do that. And so the fence is by far the better option for us. And again, we feel like that is our obligation. Our obligation is to help protect, and that's what we feel like we've done.
Anything else, commissioners?
I think it's a fair proposal, but I can't agree with that one. You know, the property owner's rights. What's his name?
I don't think we're trampling on anybody's rights.
Thanks, Jim. Any further deliberation? Tammy, that's for you.
Oh, no, I saw that, thank you very much. No, I see the mouse, I'm good.
Okay. All right, commissioners, I'm gonna ask for a motion on this item.
Sure, I will make that motion.
She was right there.
I move that we approve ZMA 2024. I put the glasses on. That was tabled last meeting It is the rezoning 1,400 acres of property within the area south of Union Pacific Railroad between Weaver River and 7,500 West. The rest of the details can be seen in our packet, commonly known as Westbridge Meadows Development. I do that with all the recommendations listed in the staff report from March 11th, including that the development agreement, all of the terms in the development agreement are followed. And I do this with the findings that the development agreement is the best way to develop specifically in Western Weaver County. And also that this development follows the general plan and uses water the best way we can for development in Western Weaver County.
Thank you. One question, and this is probably for staff. Charlie, is there, should we reference in our motion the development agreement from the March 11th meeting? Or should we reword that to the most current version of the development agreement?
Oh, yeah, clarity is great.
Okay, the development agreement from
Is this the most current one? Can we
the
say
current
release date?
development agreement, but with the recommendations from our March 11th meeting.
Okay. Have a motion, I'll ask for a second.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner McCormick,
Aye.
Commissioner Andreotti,
Aye.
Commissioner Wicker,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Nay.
Commissioner Clons,
Aye.
Commissioner DeVal.
I,
Chair votes aye as well, motion passes. Thank you very much. That was a well vetted item over a long time, not just tonight.
Chair, can I make a motion, or can I make a statement on my vote?
You certainly can.
I just wanted to state, I mean, I do appreciate the developer's done great working. I know I've been a stick in the mud on several things, and I'm really glad I did win 1,800 and couldn't win this buffer one. But I do think overall, you know, when this builds out, I'm not against the development, I would like to see that buffer one. WMA.
Fair. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to the end of our items for the agenda on tonight's meeting. Next item on the agenda is public comment for items not on the agenda. Don't everybody rush up at one time. All right. Next item, remarks from the planning commissioners.
I hate to beat a dead horse, but I tend to do it, so I apologize in advance. No, it's just the subject, I am. So I'm beating myself, I guess, but like, what we're saying, what I'm trying to say is. That last motion that we voted on, I also don't wanna see, and I want us to remember this when it comes forward, after this development is completed or in its phases, whatever. And that 1,800 and all those other routes that need to be put in there, I want us to remember that we're not forcing other property owners to comply just because this development's here as well. They still have their property rights, just like we gave this applicant their property rights. So,
Very good, very well said. Okay, commissioners, other remarks? We've been waiting for you, Tammy, because you have said absolutely the least tonight, so you must have a whole bunch of remarks.
But she brings up the best points.
She does. She's the wise owl.
I just really enjoy all of you people. I mean,
Don't lie. I didn't ask for
I
it.
really do enjoy all of you people.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anything else, commissioners?
Tiffany, let me make sure that you have that on record, that Cammy said it 3 times. that she-
Well, I only heard 2, but I'll make sure I get that third one in, yeah.
Good.
We're gonna need that in writing, Cammy.
Thanks very much. Director Grover.
Just one item today in the county commission meeting, the county commission approved the Holland project, which was 25.69 acres going from A1 to RE15. Just for coordinates on that one, it's 600 south and 4,700 west. So just want you to be aware of that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Did all of our conditions stay through on that?
I believe so. Yeah, Tammy, you want to verify that?
So in going through the commissions from the, or excuse me, the conditions from the planning commission, you guys had just made a modification that was related to a trail location. We have been back and forth with the developer on those trail locations, what made the most sense, what was proportionate to ask for. And so in that chair vice chair meeting, we just had Brian and Andrew. Brian, you were there, right? Right. We had shown you the updated concept plan with those trails and you felt it was fine, it was minimal enough to go forward to the county. Does that answer your question? Okay.
All right, anything else, Director? Okay. Legal counts, man, and don't keep us for an hour.
Good, thanks.
Well done, man.
Thanks, we appreciate your.
Two main statements, it depends, and well done, right? Yeah. I appreciate that one. You're welcome.
That's what they get taught in law school.
Sometimes they come together, it depends if you were well done.
All right, thanks. Well, we're going to adjourn now our work session, which is a discussion regarding the zoning map amendment application and associated development. And I'll read the rest of that when we get into it. We're gonna take 5 minutes.
Good.
All right, looks like we are now back in session for a work session item. I'll introduce that work session item now. WS1, a discussion regarding the zone map amendment application and associated development agreement for Bennett Farms rezone, a master plan development that will rezone approximately 550 acres of property located within the area bounded by 12th Street, 4700 West in the Weaver River. Proposed rezone is to a new proposed zone called Traditional Neighborhood Zone, TN, which will allow a variety of uses within a master plan development guided by a concept plan, including single family, residential, mixed residential, and mixed neighborhood commercial. Excuse me. The proposal may also include a dual zone coupling the TN zone with the county's existing form-based zone. Black Pine Group is our applicant, and I don't know if we're gonna get any introduction from Charlie or not. It looks like we're gonna get some papers passed out.
Good Lord, I ain't gonna get enough in front of me.
Ah, the development agreement. Oh, man.
Trey. Sure. You know what I mean?
Are you the acting director the rest of the time tonight, Charlie?
No, he's right there.
Oh, there he is. Oh, sorry.
And the dealer deals 5, but shy would be 5. You remember that, I don't know why. The dealer deals 5, and 5.
You get us more combinations than in my locker room.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, this is my portal, this is my table. No, actually, no, no.
Oh, good.
That's too fair. I don't know, it hurt a little bit where. Well, we're going in the right direction.
They're getting better. To be happy for that. Next time, we'll be happy.
Then he'll get on the computer and get us like 50 pages on there.
I just wanted to give you guys just a quick heads up intro on this one. And I haven't been able to touch base with the folks from Black Pine the last couple of days to get a really good strategy on how this meeting will go. So we're gonna kind of play it a little bit by ear and let it be a true work session. I hate the dais, I hate the podium, I like sitting at the table because it feels a lot more comfortable, but this feels really important and official over here. The 3 things that I have in front of you guys. The bigger one, that is the zoning development agreement. Now we sent them over a draft. They have sent, this is their response. They sent this back as their draft. Now, just so you guys know how this works, you go back and forth until you find something that everybody can agree to. Usually what happens when staff is doing this negotiation is we get it pretty darn close and then we bring it to you guys to have a look at. So, you'll see a lot of different things in here. Doesn't mean that we're far apart. It just means that, you haven't seen, you're not looking at the cleaned up version yet. So we'll continue to work with the applicants on, coming to consensus on whatever goes in this, development agreement, but we do plan on having these guys on the work session, first work, or the work session in May, but let me confirm, we did have them on this one, right? Do you remember?
Is this one, didn't we switch with the Ogden Valley?
I thought we replaced. In fact, I thought we replaced this last meeting, so let me check on that, but for some reason my calendar says.
Well, let's double check on that.
Okay.
But in any event, if we can do one for Western Weaver, let's try to do what we can too. Cause I think with Ogden Valley, I don't think we need one.
I don't have anything for it.
Can you tell us the date again?
First Tuesday in May.
And that's going to be a work session?
Yes, work session.
I can't do that.
Darn it, it's already on our schedule,
As a work session, is it?
No,
No.
this is we meet.
Regular meeting.
Yeah.
I thought it was the 13th, we have our meeting, but I didn't have anything on the 6th.
Charlie, I have it, the 6th is a work session, the 13th is a regular meeting
For Western Weaver?
for Western Weaver.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct, because I think this last month, we did a work session, we used Ogden Valleys for you guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have 2 this month. Oh, that's.
Yes, and 2 next month, I think it's a standard, we have a regular work session.
Welcome to my fun.
I'm trying to keep track of this.
I'm coming to the kids' rodeo, I ain't coming next time.
It's
Yeah, I've rescheduled this thing around our planning commission.
These are generic.
So it is our template, yeah, modifications to the template. So you'll see that, and for those who can't make it, that's fine, I just wanted to make sure you knew. I'm gonna apologize in advance, but, it'd be nice if you did homework just by going through it and seeing what it is that staff has requested versus what it is that they're, counter proposing. So you can kind of see a little bit, where we're going. Because after that work session, 2 weeks, or a week later, it's intended to be on for a public hearing if we can come to some agreement on where we are.
Any specific sections in this thing?
No, maybe I can go through and highlight a little bit better. It's actually pretty, because it's our template, it's pretty well based on land use regulation. There's a little bit of engineering in there. That you'll find, and quite a bit of legalese. So if you get to the legalese, you can probably skip most of that. The key word I like to make fun of is force majeure. If you get to a different language, probably stop. I'm assuming force majeure is a different language.
Well, we've all got to go back to school.
So that's the development agreement.
A lot of strikeouts in this thing.
You'll be able to get your head wrapped around, well, one thing you'll notice with strikeouts is sometimes their counter proposal is actually very close to what was sent out to them. Or maybe it has the same context, it's just written differently. Difference between a planner writing a document and an attorney getting a response.
So the original, what's what we proposed and what's what they're proposing as far as.
Okay, so what they did was they took the document that I sent over to them, which did have some track change. And they accepted all of them and then started editing off of the accept all. So anything you see in here that is a strikeout, it's them striking. And anything you see as an underline, it's them adding.
What's the difference in blue and green?
And
yellow.
It's actually been a little while since we've done text amendments, hasn't it? So the blue is an insertion. The red is a strikeout, and the green, if it's green strikeout, it means it's moving somewhere inside the document. If it's green underline, it means it's where it moved to.
Copy and paste.
Basically, yep. So green means that's, we already had it in there, they just wanted to put it somewhere else. And they agreed, which is fine. Any questions about development agreement? No, I just wanna make sure everyone's expectations are.
Strikeout, good, Lord. Hey, Charlie, what you doing this weekend?
Well, I know what I'm doing. I wanna make sure everyone's comfortable with the knowledge, and setting expectations of that, in the work session. We are likely to come with a different version of even this. But I wanna make sure you guys see the context so that you're a little bit more prepared to see that next version. That next version, hopefully, is a much more polished version. As you look at this, if you've got some concerns, feel free to let me know. But I don't have the expectations of you guys giving me any feedback on this. I just want you guys to have it to study so you can see the different points.
I guess I'm just wondering. I mean, we're trying to stick to a standard development agreement. And this just gets rid of our standard development agreement. And so I'm concerned with, I mean, if it's saying the same thing, why don't we stick with our development agreement?
Well, let me be clear on our side of things. The county hasn't accepted any of the requested changes. So, if you guys would rather see what it was that we sent out to them, actually, I think I might have sent it out to you guys already. But, I can send it out again if you'd rather see that, version of it. But this will help you get the context of maybe if they're asking for something different, what it is that they're asking for. Now, whether we go with our standardized template or not, that standardized template was designed for much smaller subdivisions like the one that we saw earlier on the agenda today. Not the really big one, the really small one, comparatively speaking. It's designed in a way to try and help this be a lot easier when it gets to the larger developments. We usually do a lot more flex on those. So I'm not married to our standard. However, I wanted to make sure you guys knew that we were starting from the standard so that you can kind of see where we went from there. Because I know there's been a bit of trust that's been developed with that. Any questions about development agreement other than it's long and you guys don't want to read it?
So if you would have given us the version without all of the cross out, would have been about a third this much?
Yeah, probably half.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
So would you rather have the black line where I just go in and show you what they're asking for? Kind of defeats the purpose because I want you to see both sides.
I like what you get.
Yeah.
I don't want you to tip over another forest either.
Well, we are planting a lot of trees with this development and other
No,
ones.
we're taking those out.
They really want it. The developer really wants the trees, so.
And I want.
So, you mean to tell me through all of this, all these strikeouts and everything else that's in here, there's one little teeny section that's highlighted yellow that's to be discussed, it's an open item, everything else is.
Yeah, let's let the applicant address that a little bit more specifically in just a moment. I wanna get through presenting the pages that I handed out to you.
Okay, perfect.
The next set of pages, this is the TNZ. It is just a little bit more cleaned up than the last version that you guys saw. So this is the traditional neighborhood zone. Now, I think what staff is gonna recommend, and it sounds to me like the applicants are okay with it, is that this be a traditional neighborhood form-based zone. And so it will be form-based. This is the way we get away, I want to say get away, this is the way we achieve the requirement of not changing the zoning in the future. We zone it to form-based and we rezone it to TN and a traditional neighborhood. When the TN expires, if it ever does expire because the development agreement has an expiration, then the form-based prevails. So they know what they fall back to. Or at least we know what they fall back to if it's some other owner who comes in later. Okay, so that's the TNZ. The next sheet is a matrix. And this is one, I'm really glad that they made this. Now, I sat down with them last week to go over this matrix and we made some changes to it, so you're not gonna see exactly what it is that we came to a conclusion of, but this tells you what is the subject item and in what document will you find it? Will you find it in the TN? Will you find it in the development agreement, or will you find it in the design code? Okay. Now, when it comes to those three items, the one item you don't have in front of you is the design code. And that's with intent. You guys had a good look at the design code, and I think the request from the planning commission was, can we simplify a little bit? If there are things in the design code that fits better in the code, just put it in the code like The flagship folks did, just let's make a code that works for the development. And then if there's unique items, we can have unique items in the design code. So the intention with the design code is to essentially remove the county from what would otherwise be an excess level of review for the project. So just going back and forth, one thing that Jeff has mentioned to me in the past is he feels like we're kind of beating him up a little bit because he's proposing additional design above and beyond what we would otherwise expect. And that's both true and untrue at the same time. Normally, when we see development proposals, they're a lot smaller and we see building renderings. We don't want these guys to give us building renderings for a few reasons, a variety of reasons. They don't know what they want to build yet. They don't know who wants to buy from them yet. We don't want them to build yet for those same reasons. We want vacant buildings or buildings that people don't want to take up. And so I've always looked at this as a spectrum. Your development agreement can be very specific on one side, or it can be very general on the other side. Very specific is a picture. A picture says 1,000 words. You give me a picture of something, I know what it is that we gotta do. On the more generalized side of things, it takes a lot of words to explain something that would otherwise fit in a picture if you don't know exactly what that picture is yet. So they're putting together the concept that doesn't define the picture, but it does guide what that will be in the future. That's the design code, and that is what their architect will administer for the project. That means that they don't, for the stuff that's in the design code, they don't have to come to the county to get special permits. When they come in to submit for a land use permit, a building permit, a subdivision application, all that kind of stuff, we're gonna review it for what's in the TNZ. We're gonna review it for what's in the rest of the code. Above and beyond that, if they've got special or unique, or I should say specialty design architecture, that will be their architect that applies it. Now, one thing that we have requested, however, is the design code be attached to the development agreement as an exhibit, where it basically is a reference document. It's not necessarily applicable or enforceable by law or by the development agreement, but the development agreement does say that the county has some control over whether or not the architect is doing his job. And so if we have good cause or good reason to find that he's not following the design code, you'll see in the draft development agreement, there's some provisions in there about how we can go about either slapping the architect's hand or removing the architect altogether, okay? Now, if we had another year to work on this, which we don't, but if we had another year to work on this, I would probably encourage a lot more of the development agreement standards or even some of the design code standards to go into the TNC. I see this being a lot like our zones, where we went through the general plan process. We said we need to get our ordinances in line so that people can get the new 30-acre standard. And I kind of pushed back a little bit and said, let's do a few development agreements, because that'll help us get our feet under us on, and we'll see what fleshes out the end in consistency. We did, I don't know, 10 of them or so, and we got a pretty good handle on what it is we wanted. So at the point flagship came in and we're asking questions, they knew what they were asking for, we knew what we were gonna put in there because we were already asking for it anyway. And it really kind of panned out nicely. It would be nice, in my opinion, if in a year from now, the county has TNZ, traditional neighborhood zone, that any developer can use, that actually uses quite a bit of these guys' design code.
So what's the chances of us getting that in a year? And the reason I say that is because we were going through the general plan. How many applications? Winston Farm, Stagecoach, or not Winston Farm, Winston Park. We had at least a half a dozen that we said, can you just wait? What's happened over the course of the last few years since we okayed and approved the new general plan?
You got a lot done, right? A lot of development agreements. They didn't wait, that's for sure.
They didn't wait, but what did they come back in and ask for?
Oh,
And so that's what I'm saying, you know, I mean, I get it, and I get there's a lot of money at stake here, and I understand the reasoning for hurry up and hurry up some more. But at the same time, does it really save any time if you're gonna get something better if you wait just a little bit?
Yeah, and that's a great question for the applicant, and I'll let the applicant kind of explain the timing concerns. One thing that I have talked to them about is putting together a backup plan. The backup plan being that, you know, they come to the planning commission with this in the next couple of meetings and then in the hearing. As long as you guys are comfortable or showing that you're comfortable, we stick with this for now. The backup plan is we take some of the details of the design and the things that we might want to see in a code. And we just write right in the development agreement. If they get the zone, they get the development agreement, that the traditional neighborhood zone is a new zone that gets adopted. But nothing happens until we flesh out the design standards. So we could always do that. What that would do in that case is it would give them sense of assurance that they're gonna get the zone. They're not spinning their wheels, so that they can go do whatever financing they need, or, you know, take care of whatever ownership challenges they may have, knowing that at the very least, they're gonna get something really great and they're gonna have the allotted development units assigned to the property. And then that would give us another couple of months, few months to sort out the design details. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating for that, I just wanted to make sure we had a way out, because as I was looking at what they have proposed, I really liked it. In fact, I like what it is based on. We bought it was based on the Smart Code version 9.2. We bought the Smart Code version 9.2 just so we knew what it was we were doing if we did go this way. And as I look at that document, it's an easier way to zone, in my opinion. It's got a lot more design standards, but it's a lot less about use and a lot more about what does this place look like, how does it feel? What's in the public realm, how does the public realm feel from a community perspective? What's allowed in the private realm, and how does the private realm feel from a landowner perspective? So I really like that. Our board-based zone is quite a bit based off of that, but I think they did it better. In fact, I think they created form-based, and so the authors of that document. So of course they're going to do it better. Okay, any questions for me before I turn it over to Jeff?
Commissioners? Okay. You're good for a minute, Charlie. Thank you.
This feels very official.
It's like a tribunal.
You want coffee later, right? You need to get weight from.
Is there a chair? Is there a bigger chair?
If it wasn't like 120 degrees in here.
We try to do that to Charlie, but he's just coming to you to stand.
Yeah, what you don't know, they've got the janitor set up the guillotine out in the court.
I'm in sweat.
Well, I think before you get on, maybe just, I'll tell you how we got here. So when we first started, Charlie had recommended we create a development agreement to get our application in faster. So we had an attorney create a development agreement, not out of thin air, but based on a lot of different development agreements that have been adopted throughout the state and throughout the country. So our base development agreement was that, and then we got feedback that the planning commission would want us to use the base standard, because you were familiar with that. And we knew we were going to do some modifications because the project that we're presenting is a little different than what that development agreement, I think, is intended for. And so we started making adjustments on that, and then Charlie sent, and this is not to throw, Charlie's been great through this process, but then he sent another development agreement with his edits after we'd already amended the original template. And so then we went back and did red lines on that, and that's what you guys have. And to reiterate what Charlie said, a lot of it is, I mean, some of it's like just attorneys like to do legalese, so some of it's making the document flow better. And then some of it's replacing where things were and putting it in a different order. So there, I think you'll see a lot of red, but I don't think it's as abrasive as it appears.
One of the things he means by that, our standard is made for, so it could be applied to a whole host of things. So we separated the whole development process out into several different sections. The dedication of streets section, the building of streets section, the dedication of trails section, the building of trails section. None of that is needed here because dedication and building is going to be happening all at the same time.
So and we're happy to sort of summarize some of the big items, and we could do that. I think we tried to do that in the term sheet to kind of help it flow better, the matrix, obviously. And for us, why this setup matters, where we have the zone, development agreement, design code, is that design code is really what we want to create. And to put it into a zone, to codify into a zone, and to have the flexibility that we need in the design code is really hard to do, to try to incorporate everything in that. I think that's why we are pointing to the design code, and the design code is based on the smart code, so it's not like it's just like you do whatever you want, it's very strict, actually. And that is what our development is going to be based on. And then in this latest development agreement, the county has a lot more teeth in the town architect. In the developer, so that if the county's feeling like something's not working, there's a bunch of stuff in the development agreement that points to us coming back in and fixing whatever needs to be fixed. So I just wanted to sort of give that, I mean, we're not opposed to creating the TNZ zone, part of it is you don't know what you don't know, but we also like the flexibility in the design code that's governed by the town architect, that's overseen by the planning director. And so, we felt like there would be so much flexibility in the zone that if you go to apply that to a different project, it may be too flexible for that versus having the teeth that the development agreement has and the design code has.
One of the things that we were concerned about, and not with this group here, they're great to work with, but if the project gets sold, a different architect comes in, how much is that architect going to be working for the developer who's paying them versus how much of that architect is going to be working for the community? So one of the most important parts of the development agreement is the section that says the architect who has to be licensed, who has to follow a particular code of ethics for his profession, is going to be ethical and will make decisions that are in the best interest of the neighborhood and the community at large. We'll prioritize those kinds of decisions over developers' desire for cost savings. Okay, so when the developer comes in and says, we want to cut some corners, that's where the architect says, no, we're not going to do that because we don't have the standing to do it. And he's got to report to the county at some point that they are actually not cutting corners. Now, if there's a way to do both, cut corners, quote unquote, cost savings, and do some really great things for the community, that'd be, I mean, we don't want to cut that kind of thing out.
Any questions in sort of the general structure?
Questions at all?
On the development agreement or on the
So
fee sheet?
Well, wait a minute, it sounded like there's a caveat here, so go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think for us, like, I mean, I won't tell you what we spent on legal bills on our fourth iteration of this, but I think overall, we just wanna know that the structure works. And then we can hone in on the points that matter most. So, you know.
Like the template, so this is your template, that's what.
So we have the TNZ zone that points to the development agreement, that points to the design code. That structure, and it's not all built into a zone, you know, it's typical on a very simple development.
The form-based TNZ zone.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a problem with the structure.
Okay.
I have some questions about some of the uses within the structure.
So the uses in the TNZ zone is a copy and paste of the form-based use table.
We need to look at our own use table.
Well,
Since when is solar permitted?
hold on to that thought. So the form-based, if you recall, there are like 8 different street types. So we go from a very dense street type to a very rural street type. So if you see something like agriculture, you're not going to see that in the dense street type. You're going to see that in the rural street type. So as they were going through looking for things that might fit the project, they've got essentially 3 street types. They've got well, I guess it's more like 5 street types, but they got the inner transect zone. They've got the middle.
Please come up to the mic so that we're recording.
Oh, are we not recording with the little one?
We are up there, but the L2.
So if you look at their master plan, you'll see primarily 3 transects. You've got the more urban transect that kind of follows some of the more main streets. That's where you're going to get a lot more your commercial or your higher density. Then you got the next dense, which is I can't remember which transect. It's transect probably 3, and then you got your least dense, which is kind of on the outside periphery, which that's transect 2. They correspond quite a bit with the way that our form-based zone is done. We just happen to have 8 in our form-based. So if you would like to see this actually parsed out differently by transect, that's more than fine. In fact, the design code parses out uses a little bit differently by transect. So we can go through add that in the meeting too. Does that make sense?
Does that help you, Commissioner Edwards?
No.
You understand our intent, if there's uses, I mean, we just commented this, but we have no problem striking out solar field, I think. Part of it is if you're gonna have some kind of energy efficient, you know, quarter acre or something, is that a lot, I don't know, I'm just saying. You know, we're happy to strike out anything that doesn't feel, it's not like we're trying to build a solar field, so strike it out.
This would allow you to put the whole thing in a solar farm based on what's in here.
But not with design code.
Yeah, they all go together, so it's not like this one document gives them permission. It has to go with the development agreement with the design code, so.
There is one thing I do like that's in here that says it's permitted, but it's not. I swear this one ain't permitted anywhere else in our code, except in the manufacturing zone, is outdoor storage. That's truly in the form base.
No, I think you're right, it's not the form based. So they might have,
Maybe we slipped one in, I don't know where that came from.
So don't get me wrong, I support this because we need more of this outside of our manufacturing zone. But currently, I'm pretty sure outdoor storage
As long as it's fenced.
is only allowed in our
Can't
manufacturing
see you
zone.
have.
Well, and again, it's like the design code wouldn't allow.
Huh?
I wouldn't do it.
I see.
That's the first piece of property I wanna go buy in there. Outdoor storage.
You gonna buy all of it, 500 acres of
No,
outdoor
so I just want like 5 acres, I'm building a big outdoor storage lot.
I see what
That's where
happened
the
here.
money's at, all these small lots, no one's got room for their trailers.
So when we created the form-based zone, we actually. Some of you might have been on the planning commission long enough to remember when I was first hired on, one of the first tasks was to try and actually streamline the table of uses that are across the 30 different zones that we have. We actually have, if we add this one, 34.
It was
different
our
zones.
NCP days.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. What we did when we created the form-based zone is we did just that. We said, if we're creating a new zone, let's do what we should have done on all these other zones. But all of the uses that are in the code in that zone, and then put a permitted P, a not permitted N, or a C for conditional. My guess is when you're looking at solar farms, you're probably gonna find not permitted in there, for most of it, except for the larger lot areas. So as you look at each of these
with you
uses,
there, but everything's a P.
so we can parse that out too, and maybe that's the subject of today's meeting.
We have no problem hacking up the use table because it's gonna be guided by the design code, it's not gonna permit a big solar field or a big house
Or a dairy farm.
or a dairy, there's no dairy farm.
There is one.
Oh, you don't have the latest one, cause I said, Charlie, you cannot give this to Bren. There's a dairy farm, there's another one that a zoo. The zoo should be in there.
It's in here.
So I found that there's two that I find odd in the Weaver River corridor. You can have a short-term rental or transient lodging, so nobody can build a house, but you can build a rental house.
We don't allow short-term rentals in the lower part of the valley.
So the only reason that was in there, and this goes back to some of our work sessions, like a bed and breakfast.
Oh, you can't have that in the corridor.
Yeah, well, that was in a work session
Oh,
that we
really?
talked about of having a restaurant or a bed and
Well, a
breakfast.
restaurant, yes, but somewhere where
Sure.
people are sleeping. Weird.
It's the corridor, I don't mind, I mean, we think having very specific conditional uses.
That extra 200 feet of the corridor, the 100, they can't do nothing.
So how this reads was that if there is a particular use that would activate along the river, that would be nice to have a place there, then we would come in for conditional use.
Yeah,
That's, but there's also this open space zone that I think is gonna now govern the corridor, is that right, Charlie?
Yeah, so we've asked them to include another zone, the open space zone. So at least the 100-foot corridor would go within that zone. And then from there may be other areas that they want to also include in that zone, but also other open space areas inside of the development wouldn't have to be in the zone, but they would choose to make it open space because they or just regardless of how much area we get in that open space zone, they still have to meet the 10 acres per 1,000 people.
so the 100 feet is definitely open space, and then within the 300 feet are these conditional uses,
No,
or
so-
everything's just the 100?
So the conditional use was before the open space zone was proposed to us.
Oh, so this isn't even
So
valid.
that whole column's going away.
Oh, now I got it. I did.
You guys wanna go through the list?
You betcha.
Well, it's just all committed now.
That's why we need to go through it and say, cause there's some things that I agree should be in here, but I think they need to be conditioned. Not every
We're gonna put in the open space, section.
Or a warehouse, or, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here with peas on it.
So I guess what's the goal of the traditional neighborhood zone? I see a neighborhood zone being more of the dense housing and not, I mean, it's going to have the commercial uses for sure. But are we trying to include? I mean, what kind of ag and what kind of larger parcel uses are we putting into this zone?
I mean, if you look at our concept plan, it's a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Ag is, as far as ag, we want a farm-like part of the plan. What that looks like, how it feels, I'm not totally sure.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be commercial.
Like they have that big farm area.
Yeah,
And I like that,
yeah.
but we've gotta limit things that can go in there, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I get there's lots of checks, we've got the town architect and but there's certain things in here.
We're okay to strike stuff that doesn't feel right. I think it was, I mean, for us, it was just a copy and paste. We know the design code's not gonna allow a lot of that says permitted unless it was at some small scale that made sense. So we're not married, like the use table.
Taking, like, not everything's gotta be struck, just that I would like to have the discussion through it, just like we did
Let's do it.
years ago, and NPC, right?
Permitted, conditional. And keep in mind, some of these might need additional qualifications, for example, agricultural hobby farm. In our other codes where we have agricultural hobby farm, it's a minimum 5 acres.
Yeah.
So we do add little standards like that to it as well. So
So
you
I think
could,
there's some, like, even on home occupation, isn't there some standards on?
Mhm.
Cause that one concerns me, so permitted use, cause then you're gonna get somebody to come in and be a landscaper, and then their whole entire backyard becomes their landscape business. And
there's been a little bit of debate back and forth, given the structure, whether or not other county codes would apply. I think we've gotten to the point where we all agree that the codes that aren't going to apply will be specifically and explicitly stated either in the development agreement or otherwise. So, for example, home occupation, we have a whole home occupation chapter that they've got to comply with those standards, and we can add that in and just say, reference that, reference this, you know. So on each of these, we can go through that. Just want to start at the top?
Yep.
I need some help. Okay, so start to, okay. To me, this is what we're talking about.
No, it's really more intense.
And this
What I was thinking.
is what's gonna be, this is the use.
This is the zone.
Right, but to me, I thought we were talking about this.
And that's an occupation.
I mean, whatever you want to talk
Yeah.
about, but
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to get into the uses, I mean, we've all got our. Let's just get it.
I think they go hand in hand. I mean, the development, I have nothing to say about this. I ain't read it.
Okay,
I like the template, I like the format, but until we have a chance to go through and read it,
well, that's it, right?
yes.
You've had it for at least 10
This
minutes.
over here, maybe it's copy and paste.
Yeah. But I think there's stuff in here that we need to verify, because this goes hand in hand with this. Right? Because the difference with this subdivision, and this is just my eyes of it, and maybe I'm wrong. This isn't traditional, right? We're creating the zone based on what's in here. There's not gonna be a TN zone in the county code.
There will be.
There will be.
Yes. Yeah, so you'll have the TN zone in the county code. The TN zone will say something to the extent of, these are the things you can do in a TN zone. But in order to use the TN zone, you have to have a master plan, number one, you have to have a development agreement, and you have to have design. Okay, now, as time goes on, as we get a little bit more experience and we get more comfortable with the smart code, we'll start porting over stuff from that design code right into, so we've got uses, then we'll have design standards, so we'll follow about the same thing. The idea behind the smart code is it doesn't talk very much at all about uses and almost all about design, and that is just moving away from the idea that we need to regulate by uses and start regulating by design, public realm, private realm. I think Mike Watkins, their architect, said the easiest way to think about this is do what you're told out front, do what you want out back. With some limitations, obviously, you can't have a horse on 2,000 square feet, but maybe you can on 2 acres. Right? So that's the intention of how that's gonna work. Does that make sense for you? Okay. The TN zone isn't gonna have a ton of detail like the form-based will yet, and maybe it never will. Maybe this is the only project that ever gets approved under it. We'll see.
We have like a 400 acre.
Yeah.
You know, to Brent's point, I think if I'm understanding, we do have a lot of things in this document, in this TNZ document, that aren't gonna be applicable to this development,
That are or are not.
are not.
We're happy, let's just go through the table.
Yeah.
And let's strike with anything that you guys feel, cause we agree. We agree there's, and we're less, I mean, we understand the concern, looking at a zone. We're less concerned because the design code really is the thing that we feel strongly about, and will never allow for a lot of the things that are in this. So again, why have it permitted? Good question, it's good.
Right. But if your architect that's putting together your design code says, well, now here's an idea, let's go back to the table and see if that's allowed. He needs to have a good document for that, to base his code, to some degree.
Implementation of the uses will be staff's job. So design code will just be design code. So for example, right now, we don't regulate the design of single family dwellings. These guys want to regulate the design of single family dwellings. We'd like to still stay out of it even after they are regulating that. Now, we do regulate a 3-story stacked apartment. We will regulate that, and we do have some design standards in our code. We've got an architecture code and we've got a design review code. What their design code would do would allow the architect to say, this meets our design code, and subject the county to essentially say, okay, we're just gonna check off that it meets your design code because we know yours is above and beyond what ours is. If we see anything glaring, we can always report back and say, hey, check this again. But for the most part, we'll just accept the architect's recommendations. That really reduces the amount of review time that staff will have to do on even our design reviews.
So can I make a suggestion so we don't have to go through this line by line?
Sure.
You guys take this back, you guys know your design code.
Mhm.
Look at the use table, base it on your design code and bring us back.
That's fine.
What fits your design code and what'll be in.
Okay.
Then we don't have to go through this line by line and.
That's fine, and and the thing I will just say, we understand our intent, it's not to put a soul.
No, and I get it. I'm not trying, I'm just saying, there's a lot.
No, I know, we'll do it, that's fine.
Probably no easier. Thinking we don't need these. I'm just kidding.
WBs.
Yeah.
I'm in my honeybees in the backyard.
I don't want honeybees in my neighbor's backyard.
Well, in all of this.
Yeah, we'll go through
All into this, which then, this standard should be.
So my suggestion is we have some homework.
Yeah.
And maybe, for a little bit longer, if you guys are willing, maybe we can hit some of the big areas in the development agreement, maybe 2 or 3 of them that may, you guys.
I would love that, you guys are trying to point us out some stuff.
Okay, let me open this.
Things you think will be controversial.
Yep. Charlie?
That sounds weird. Wow.
Yeah.
Should we go through a few of the development agreement items that you feel like they'll want to bring to you in a second?
Yeah, I think so. Do you have any specific?
I'm looking right now, they will.
It did.
I think that's probably the most important concept of open space. That makes so sense.
Maybe let's talk about the town architect and just make sure you guys are okay with how we're presenting this and how the county has some oversight.
Okay.
So 8.12.
Section.
Sorry, 38, page 38.
Page 38.
Yeah.
I think page 19 for.
Oh, sorry.
19, yeah.
So we went through a lot of it already.
Well, we can.
8.1.2.
8.12.
8.12, that is over on page 38. Yeah, at the bottom of 38.
Bottom of 38. And then we can also talk.
8.12.
Sorry, that's right, yes.
It's on page 19, it says 8.1.
1.2. Okay. 8.12. I can read it, or you guys can read it.
So question on there, it says not an employee of the master developer or sub-developer, does that mean they'll be like a paid contractor? How does that work? They'll get paid by them, but.
Charlie put this in, I think it's to, so that it doesn't feel like he's just in our back pocket.
Yeah.
That there's some separation, the county has some over, like it says, the county and the developer will appoint, so you guys have to appoint as well.
Okay,
And then you also have some oversight.
okay, and then, but the
We're
developer
paying-
would be paid.
We're
for it.
paying for it.
Okay, but it wouldn't be an indirect employee essentially, okay.
I can't remember.
That helps us so that we don't have to go out to bid to hire someone. We don't have to, they can come in with their desired architect up front. They nominate, then the county commission appoints. And then removal, at least if it, I can't remember if it's, okay, removal would be, they can request removal, but they don't have unilateral authority for removal. We have unilateral authority for removal if we find a legal violation, an ethical violation, or there have been repeat occurrences of not upholding the design code.
And then we would jointly report.
Yeah, and then we would jointly replace, so there's a suspension period. So that there's a little bit of time for us to all get our head wrapped around what the problem is. Before they're just automatically dismissed. During that suspension period, the developer can also propose an interim architect so that they don't have to be stalled during the 3 months that we debate whether or not the original architect made the right decision on the design of the clock hands on the clock tower, whatever that thing may be. And then when the county commission says, no, we think that you have violated the code, they've got infinite discretion to do that, to say, we think you have violated this. Then at that point, they can present another architect for nomination that the county commission can either choose to employ or not for the project.
County commission or planning director?
It's the county commission that would be due, I think. Wasn't that how it originally was?
Wait. I mean, I think this contradicts what you said, Charlie. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. The county has no rights or obligations to enforce or approve the design code.
So that's just the design code, right?
But that's within the same paragraph, right?
So it's
That's the design code.
yeah, so we jointly appoint the architect that creates the
I just
code.
kept reading.
The town architect creates a design code.
And we
The
jointly.
county does not enforce the design code, but they do help appoint the architect.
That's right, and I see where Casey's going with that question, though. We could work out the details on that, because if the town architect is violating their own design code, how can we remove the architect if we're not enforcing the design code?
Yeah, I
So we'll fix that. It's a good point.
And also it does say the county planning director's failure to approve the replacement town architect. So to me, this doesn't look like it goes back to the commission. So if that's what your intention was, you may want to look at that.
Okay, it may have been modified or lightened just a little bit, but we'll go back through and I thought commission would be great because they're the ones who appoint, people to the parks board and stuff like that, so.
Makes sense. I would think the county commissioner, I wouldn't want, I don't know if Rick wants that on his shoulders.
I guess that's true.
That's what the elected people get paid for.
Yeah.
I tell you, if I was the developer, I'd probably want it to be the planning director, so I don't have to go through a whole elected official. It's gonna be a mess and it's gonna be a process, but I think we originally said commission, so we'll work with
That's
this.
the intent.
But I think, kind of to Andrew's point, or someone's point up here, they said, the commission appoints, right? They appoint people to boards, they appoint, in my eyes, this is the same thing.
Yep, agreed.
We
And
don't
that's
have
why
a
I
problem.
think the commission needs to appoint that.
We don't have a problem.
Hopefully, we never have to remove one and appoint a new.
But
But
so long as we got Mike, I doubt that we'll ever have to remove anything.
as long as you remember, we live where it snows.
The next section is design code. I think that's important to just understand again, in case of your point, I think that was going.
Oh, it's gone. How do you get it out there?
So is the design code a living document?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. But it's based on the lexic, the smart code, so it's not like it's just, it has to live there, and that's where I think having the planning director have. Oversight, it's like, it's not like he just gonna do whatever he wants, it has to live in that code. And the intent of that is, we're creating a complete neighborhood, and we don't know everything, I think it's. As things come up, we can make changes, and again, it's all based on design, to make the place look and feel like we want it to.
It's dynamic.
Yeah.
It's always changing. But hopefully, but not outside of the realm of
The smart code.
what you'll, yeah.
Yeah. And I think any changes are really like. Very small tweak here and there, but it's not an overhaul of the intent of the code. Probably want to talk a little bit about, what we would have to come back and get approval on versus what the town architect can change. I think you had some. idea on that. What do we call this?
We talk about warrants,
Warrants.
we eliminated warrants,
Yeah, but it's.
it's now called something else.
If I have $20 to my tax bill at the end of the year, you think that they can get us an air conditioning? I'm happy to pay.
No, but they'll take your money.
The meeting was really well.
Yeah, true. It's not a good thing.
Andrew, it was planned.
Nice. Took a shower before, I wasn't planning on taking one after, but man.
So we got.
Your wife thinks you need to spell you down here.
I know doing the spicy chips and, yeah.
Should talk about open space.
One thing I think was, 9.5, it says, the following types of changes are considered minor. And then provided whatnot, and then the next section says major street changes.
Minor major.
Like,
Okay, we'll fix that.
well, I just don't know if major street changes should be included as a minor change.
Right.
That could be a big thing.
Not referring back to 841.
Yeah.
841.
Who knows, but it's included in the authorized changes, and I think that might be concerning the main roadway that connects.
You know, I think we gotta look and see what's in 841 to see what it is.
Boundary change.
Well, so let's talk about the context of what is
Requirements.
what's in this section. This section basically says,
Major streets.
originally the idea, it might be better to understand where the original idea came from. Originally, the idea said that the architect says to the design code, there's a lot of stuff, including street cross sections in the design code. But I don't know that we want to have an architect be solely responsible for allowing those changes to happen, right? The big concern is, well, great, we got our architect doing what they said they were gonna do, but now the architect has changed everything. Okay, so what I pitched to them was the idea that these kinds of changes, most of these kinds of changes would come through the planning director from the architect. But once the planning director has made a decision on an item, and that decision can be carried through because it's the same kind of thing for other items. So, you know, they say that their design code says signs are red, and they want to change it to green. They come in, they talk to Rick, they get a formal decision from Rick on allowing it to be green because the architect has used his architectural knowledge, the design code, the smart code, and Rick's knowledge on determining whether or not green is in the best interest of the community. Rick gives a formal written approval that green works, and then all of those signs afterwards can be green. They don't have to go back through the process to get a new approval. So that was the original intent of how this is written. It might be a little bit different now, but
I see how it's going
You get the
now, so I
point.
read it where it's like, as long as it's not changing anything outside of the boundary, we're not as concerned about what happens on the inside of the boundary. So if you change the major street within the inside of the boundary, we're not concerned. It's in how it affects the connection to the outside of the boundary.
well, so a major street in this case would be like a collector street or arterial street. So we've got 5500 west, 5100 west, 12th Street, 400 north. I guess we have 4700 west as well, and 700 north. Those are all either arterial or collector streets. We want to see those for the most part comply with our design standard. Because we know we've got the plow blades that are the right size to fit that street, right? Over time, we're gonna look back and say, wow, that was kind of silly because we've got much better street that we've got much better equipment for, but it makes a whole lot of sense now to get from here to there. When it comes to the internal streets, we are, if it gets approved, we're offering to agree to most, not all, but most of the cross sections that they have proposed, as long as if they ask them to be public or publicly maintained, they're gonna do a financial analysis. We're gonna check their financial analysis. In fact, I was just thinking about this on the drive here, like there are probably 2 firms in the state of Utah that I would trust to do this kind of financial analysis. That will tell the county what its direct cost difference is. They will pay whatever that difference is, either through their HOA, through a tax levy, through whatever it is. If they don't do that or they don't want to do that, the HOA takes care of all of it, even if it is publicly dedicated to the HOA. So that's kind of this. It allows the town architect to get in and make minor alterations to those interior things.
Johnny, question. You know, it sounds like the architectural committee and the design code. I think Rick's gonna have to hire about 6 extra people to watch this. And basically, this is the way I see it. They're sitting here. And if your public who's joined their community has a challenge, you can do something about it.
Yes.
Is that what we're getting to?
So I'm gonna agree on a substantial point. The project that was just recommended for approval earlier in the meeting and this project both is going to lead Rick to need to hire more. That's just how it's gonna be. And I think he knows that, and I think the county commission knows that. They're talking about how to fund that as we speak. Well, not as we speak, but at this time. So figuring that part out is important, but I think the important part is we don't want to add an additional burden above and beyond what we already have. So if we're pumping out 900 building permits a year, which we are, last year, 500 yet, and we start pumping out 900 next year, but they're all on this project, we want to make sure we're not spending a dime more than we did, last year, other than COLA increases and stuff like that. So we want it to be equitable in terms of the tax burden, right? If it turns out this project is disequitable for whatever reason, we would look to the master developer or the people who live in that community, so the master developer can choose how they distribute that cost to offset the difference in that cost.
We're not gonna do 900 there next year.
You think we'll do more?
No,
No, I don't think so either. I think the market is turning a little bit, but we'll see what happens. Any other questions on that point? It's a good question.
Not on that point, but back on the streets, so. 9.5 refers us back to not exceeding 8.4.1, which talks about Lincoln Street and Minor Street pavements. Then, from what you explained a moment ago, if I heard you correctly, the larger roads are going to stay to the county's current standards.
Correct.
Is that correct? But in this paragraph, 8.4.1, it almost sounds like it means that the architect has options here to change that.
Well, and if that's the case, that'll definitely be something I get back to them that says, no, we're not agreeing to that.
It starts with notwithstanding anything in county code or disagreement, and then
Yeah.
it says the.
I think the two sections kind of contradict each other. That's how I read it too, and I made it a note here. And I'm not knocking on Director Grover. But why is this approved by Director Grover and not the county engineer?
It depends. Are you talking about street cross sections?
In 8.4.1, yeah, it says that the planning director approves this, right?
So there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'm not saying it's the right way to go about it. I think the version that I might have pumped out said the county engineer after advisement from the planning director.
And I would support that.
One of
But I
the,
think when it comes to roads and infrastructure and stuff like that,
so think about this through the lens of an architect or a engineer who has a lot of planning background. You've got the transportation engineers who are all about high speed and efficiency. Just get people to and through. It doesn't really matter what's inside of that community. The architects are a lot more concerned about what's happening inside the community. And so when you get married to two, when you get an element of efficiency while you're also getting an element of beauty, I think that's why you see a little bit of this, and that's probably why they would have deferred to the planning director on it, because planners have, in my experience, a ton of transportation to do our certification maintenance. We have to take transportation education courses that are more about community building and less about getting traffic through really fast. Now, it's really important to get traffic through really fast. 4700 West, 12th Street, we don't want to mess that up because economies are built off of that. But economies of neighborhoods are also built on a smaller scale on the inside that you don't want a transportation engineer designing those streets.
And I can validate his comments. Engineers get training. I actually did have a transportation course one, but that's not typical for the state of Utah. They are changing things up a bit. Engineers are more worried about your pavement design and the numbers, but when it comes to urban planning, that is not really part of the civil engineering coursework. So
I had an interesting conversation with someone over at UDOT. He was actually the region planner. I think for our region or maybe a different one. But we were talking a little bit about these designs and how to make streets more attractive and more useful and more community organized. We're kind of debating back and forth, and he said, well, think about Park City, for example. If you can get people very quickly through that main street, that would be just a lot more traffic and a lot more people and a lot more ability for wallets to be in that location. And I said, yes, but if you take away Main Street, you take away Park City. And then there's no reason for a highway to even exist.
somewhere in Prince you can get through quick.
I agree. I think that's why you use that as an example, because that's a challenge for you. Any other questions about that? Back it up.
No.
And I think part of the confusion on this is you're seeing it with all the ready content instead of just a clean version. I apologize for that, but we are appreciative that you're willing to go through this with us at this time. And in terms of, I think the other thing is the intent of this is not to put in something that I got you, or, and we understand trust from development. So
No.
I don't, yeah, but I'm not pushing back against the things.
We trust you, Jeff, it's the two slime and.
I know, yeah, okay.
Wait, where were you pointing? I'm on.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is, if you see something and you're like, this doesn't make sense, or we want some oversight here, we're not opposed, we're not trying to, roll them underneath, and I think the point about the planning director, as much as we love Gary doesn't want any trees anywhere, and trees are really important for us. So I think, again, the planning director with the advisement of a traffic engineer makes a lot of sense for us to have that as well, so.
So I have two quick questions. First one, remind me what green means again. And use a different color next time so I can tell it's green or black. Right now, sir, is it green or black?
Like through, definitely, maybe.
Green with an underline just moved it somewhere. Green with the strike through.
You mean, you're not a coat dogger? Well, I'm just trying to figure, I was thinking it was all black, and then I started reading the blacks together, and that makes no sense.
So green with a strike through means it's moved. Green with an underline means that's where it was moved to.
Okay.
Now, the other way to, if you're colorblind, the other way to look at this is,
Well, I guess I am, I can't tell black from all of green, but.
well, the other way to look at this is if it's something that has moved or is moving or, is moving or has moved, it's got two lines. So you'll have two strike throughs or two underlines.
Okay, because I was just gonna ask what are the two lines mean, but okay, gotcha.
All right, my next question. 8.15, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the language in that,
Is it 8.1.5 or 8.15?
sorry, 8.15. That's on page 39. I feel like this goes over exactly what we went through with one of our applicants today. I feel like the comment that Bren made during our earlier discussion with, we take this into consideration with all properties. I feel like this statement gives it more teeth that I do not feel like is appropriate on the other landowners. And I could be misinterpreting it.
This is if the master developer is going to purchase another property. They're basically saying, how do we make sure that the development agreement can apply to other properties? And what are the standards that we will apply when that happens?
No, I think this is actually, it's saying if we don't own it.
Oh, sorry, I'm on 814, sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, 814 is if we expand, that it can fall within this. 815 is if there's a budding property, just takes into account how that impacts us. And I'm in case I agree with you.
Or a property that's already in the center of everything else that you own.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's true. In this.
No, I agree. I think from the general plan standpoint, for us, we would love it to be cohesive. We understand the concern that, how do we
Yeah,
enforce?
I get that, but I don't want to enforce it on somebody, just like we had our earlier discussion, so.
Okay,
for
makes
me,
total
I
sense.
think- Well, I mean, it gives a stronger verbiage than our normal theory on how we.
It just says the county will take into account the impact that the change will have on this project, whatever happens there.
Oh, if someone inside the project wants to do
Or
something
next to it,
different than
or
before.
Not inside the project,
Oh,
adjacent
Space.
property to our project.
oh, okay.
Well-
You do own all the land within this.
Yeah, no, we own everything that we're asking for, but like, the McFarland's here, if they wanted to do something, what are they able to do? All this says is that the county will take into consideration how it impacts, how it flows. I think, our preference would be that there's some cohesiveness, I understand. your
Yeah,
point.
so would the counties, I believe, but I just think that we already do that with all, that's just our general practice, so. I feel like that, and I might be overthinking this, I just feel like it gives it stronger language to makes it so that it's more enforced. I just don't want any other landowner being pigeonholed because of your development, basically.
Another way to look at that is we did comply with this paragraph. By considering how neighboring land uses, how this might affect them and how they might affect this. We had a really great debate. So I think we actually complied with this.
So in some ways, the fence itself was, what's that? No, but I guess the fence is what happened.
Well, I'm just thinking, cause like, you probably got properties in there that are 20 acres, maybe even smaller, right? And they might meet the standards for some of those other things that you don't want in there, like a small hobby farm or a farm of some kind. And if they're I don't know if they are, if they're currently practicing that in some skill, I don't want that to become a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So there's a couple of key things. It's before the county changes land uses and permitted uses. Now, I would probably strike that and say before the county changes zoning of surrounding properties, if we were to keep this. We will consider how that change in zoning, it will affect this property. If we're gonna change a neighboring, somebody that's immediately adjacent to them to allow them to build a nuclear arsenal, they want us to consider how that affects their project. Now, I would say we do that. That's what.
Well, we just proved it earlier that we considered it, but we didn't allow them to change anything, right?
Yep, we did. Well, we got a fence out of it. Right.
I mean, this basically just says what you do as a planning commission anyway, but I don't think we have a huge concern if you want to change.
And again, I might be making a bigger deal out of it than what it is.
Well, I mean, we could just kind of get involved in the public process and express our opinions before they make the zone change anyway.
Yeah, that's why we have the hearings.
It's not
a big deal for
It's
us.
not sacred.
So just to clarify, there are areas within this rezone that you don't know, just like,
No.
no.
So
Okay, just, cause it says in here, within the project.
So the
boundaries.
McFarland property is a perfect example, you know, the McFarland's farm, their farm and their house. And if they were to develop it,
But they're next to your property.
they're
not part of it.
adjacent, yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but when you look at it, you can't just think, oh, they're on this border, the south border. What they own is not like a perfect square. There's little pieces and patches in between there as well.
Oh, yeah,
Besides though.
yours is continuous, but there are,
Yes.
it just says here within the project boundaries, that's why I'm confused.
So the project boundary is what we control.
Yeah,
Right.
I see where your confusion.
you see where it says within
Yeah,
project
it's-
boundaries,
so
but
there-
not
so
owned
there's-
by the master developer, so I'm
So
like.
there's two things. There's a couple of parcels. So they've got a big parcel that goes and then it goes around a big rectangle and then they
Oh.
develop up in here as well. Their master plan shows the area being
Oh, part of the boundary.
designed to some extent. Now, it's not necessarily part of the project boundary. I'd probably contest the use of that term.
Yeah,
but-
let's fix that, that's confusing.
But if it's within the area that is shown on their master plan, they would like us to consider what they're doing. I think it's just easier just to.
We can just take it out.
Let's just take it out.
Yeah, I was confused
It's
by
not
it,
a big of a deal.
clearly.
Maybe jump to 8.8, parks and open space.
As we're jumping to that, I wanted to make sure you guys were aware, or thinking about this. If you guys find conflicts, put a little star next to it. I wouldn't try and solve the conflict as you're reading this. That is gonna be brain damage that you guys don't need. I do that brain damage on a daily basis and, I will be going through this. So put an asterisk next to it and the next version you see after this, if it's not fixed, then I owe you lunch. That's how confident I am that I'll fix it.
So 8.8 just says how much open space we're gonna dedicate, which is a lot.
On page
Page
20.
20.
So the next one. Does it dictate how that's developed? I'm sure that's something that Charlie will add, let's see.
What are you talking about?
Just making sure that the open space is developed in conjunction with the homes. I mean, that's standard
Yeah.
Charlie practice. Commensurate, that's his word, commensurate.
Proportionate. commensurate.
Proportion. Go to sound, just-
8.8.1 just talks about what we're giving, where's the big section of the open space?
You talking about all the improvements? 83
Page 83.
or 83-1? I mean, the parkway and the trail is 84. That's what you're trying to get at.
So one question, and I don't know if this, I'm guessing this is planning commission related, but the idea of when do we dedicate open space?
Yeah.
Because I think at this point, we're probably starting in 4700 and going west. And so it's gonna be a minute till we get to the corridor. I think we're trying to figure out how that looks from a dedication of that corridor, if we're not next to the corridor, we're not developing next to the corridor. Charlie has some language in there that, you know, we have to start at the south and dedicate so much, which is hard for us because we're not gonna be close to that. So I don't know if you guys have a point of view on how we dedicate open space.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah, it's like, we'll build all the houses, never gonna build.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
And.
yeah, you wait till the end, you don't do anything, you say, okay.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I'm trying to remember getting them confused, there are commercial components to this development. And do we want to see certain commercial, it's the chicken and the egg, you know, the county wants that commercial built up, but if you don't have any people there, then nobody wants commercial, I don't know if we do any.
It's gonna benefit no one to have vacancy signs all over the place.
Yeah.
So one thing we did with the project that just got approved today, or recommended for approval, is we said open space, the minimum open space per dwelling unit equivalent shall be dedicated, and 50% of that can go wherever the developer wants it to go. The other 50 has to go to the river corridor until the river corridor is done. Once it's done, dedicated, built, then the developer gets to choose what open space goes where. I think we have an asterisk that says as long as it's within a reasonable proximity to whatever that particular project is.
I was gonna say how you access it.
Yep.
That's the key, right? It's like if we're super far away from it, the access is, even if you're improving it, nobody has access to it.
Yeah, especially if they start on 4700, but we'll have to figure that phasing out. We could say by X number of units, this shall be started. If you think about the
Not started.
yeah. Initiate at X number of units, finish before X number of units, so getting all the triggers in there. Think a little bit about the Loman View, formerly Parakeet River. We said to them, you will start at this trailhead and you will build until you get to that trailhead up there. Their response was, is that even practical to do? And my response to them was, if this is where you're starting your development, I don't care if it's practical, build. We've got access, and every single person who buys in there should have access to that river corridor. So we could kind of try and find ways to work something like that out so that we, at the very least, get access over to the river and then build along it. And then find the triggers and the metrics necessary to make sure completion improvements are
Well,
complete.
I think.
This is where I put a quarter in Jeff's back to talk about how important public realm is to.
I mean, yeah, I think that the other hard thing about it is, you know, it's actively being farmed. And so, you know, if we dedicate a section, are we improving that for nothing versus allowing the farmer to keep farming that until it actually makes sense to activate it?
But I hope you understand our perspective, because I've seen so many of these things that have failed.
Yeah.
Miserably. And so to ask for something commensurate as the build goes on, that's gonna be something that I insist on.
Yeah.
Because it just can't happen, it don't happen, that's what's unfortunate. I understand that it's actively being farmed, but at the same time, you're gonna have to figure out what makes sense between you and the tenant and work that out.
Well, I guess part of the question there is if there's a requirement of open space, can we dedicate open space that is commensurate with the ratio for residents as we're getting to the corridor, so that the open space is being taken care of and dedicated? I mean, we have a huge slough that's a big open space for us.
But whatever improvements that you are going to propose to go along with that would have to be done commensurate with that build out.
Yeah, we agree to that.
There's
Maybe not necessarily.
But not necessarily along the river.
Yeah, right, no, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, there's a paragraph we put in the development agreement from earlier also that it basically says at some point in the future, when, if it's very likely the developer is going to bail or is bailing, that some of that property or whatever that property is automatically reverts to the county anyway. Now we'd have to define what that is. I don't know if you guys get that in here. I know that there was a little bit of pushback on that for good reason. It means that we automatically get somebody's property, but we can put some parameters around that. If I'm, well, I should say me, because I'm ethical. If I was an unethical developer and I had 1,000 units that were approved and I got to 998, and just had a little bit more open space that I had to put in, but that open space was 50% of my cost when I give up those houses. You know, and so it doesn't even require a developer to be bankrupt or going bust. Some developers will just get to that point. I mean, we've seen that. I mean, don't wanna, okay, we've got a subdivision that we've actually seen that in their open space. They said it's gonna cost us more money than it's worth. We're not gonna do it.
And I think with this, for us, and again, you know, you have to put the teeth in the document because you've seen so many examples of it not working. But the amenity for this is the public realm. That is the proposition that we're gonna get people to come by here. And so for us, again, you know, quarter in the back, whatever, but that, like, improving the public realm for the community that is the plan. And so for us, you'll see from the get-go, from phase one, it's not just building a ton of homes and then cramming some little thing to suffice the county. You'll see that in phase one, it is about the public realm. So anyway, but we're okay figuring out how to put some language in it that makes you guys comfortable, also understanding we want it to be phased appropriately and not just putting islands of, you know, we understand the open space requirement, we're happy to do that by phase.
I have, sorry, quick question, did your starting location change? Cause I thought you were starting at the river before, I'm glad that you're starting at 4700.
Well, we're, it's not definitive, but we currently control the windmill west, I think is what it's called. And we're probably starting there.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that was clear. You guys will see that kind of annexed into their proposal. So I don't want you to be surprised.
That's right on 4700.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the west side. So the concept plan will be updated, we'll see that. Right.
So maybe help me understand this process. Will we still see this come through at a subdivision level?
Yes.
So I feel a lot of this last discussion will be handled at the subdivision level, just like we've done with the subdivision we approved today, putting that requirement on them that at this phase, X has to be installed. And then at that time, we're gonna know where, I mean, obviously it's a subdivision, we're gonna know where it's at. We're gonna be able to see what amenities are close, and then we can put that into place.
Okay, I have another simple question for you. On 8.8 that you pointed out, there's a strikeout. It says it's goal providing, and then you struck out at least 10 acres. Was there a reason why you cared about that?
I think we changed it to be
8.8.
It's not a huge thing, but if there's occasions when it can be a little bit more, that'd be. Beneficial, right?
8.8 just says its goal of providing at least 10 acres of public park open space for 1,000 persons.
That's just changed to just 10 acres of public.
Yeah, well, I think that's the ratio. The ratio that Charlie gave us was 10 acres. Per
Yeah, no, I know, but like you could say at least, and sometimes you're gonna give us 12 acres or 10.5 or something. Right?
I think what they're saying is, please don't ask for more.
Well, there's gonna be more, we're, in our plan, we have more open space than what is required.
So it's,
We just don't, we don't want to have to give you any additional.
that way it's not us forcing you to give. Okay, I understand.
We said at least, we didn't say at most.
Just trying to understand.
No, it's good.
It's good.
It's a good question.
Want to talk about trailheads? And then we maybe touch one other thing that you guys go, because.
Tell me not.
I she's dead. So 8.9. 3, so that's all the yellow, and the reason we colored it yellow is because we want to have a conversation with Charlie about this, but probably worth talking to you.
It's always worth talking about.
Page 38 for us.
So originally we struck this too, there was 4 trailheads that want to be dedicated. We feel like the river corridor is gonna be a living, breathing thing, and and don't wanna make these big improvements in these big areas where there's a big parking lot. We'd rather people park along the street, it's gonna be along the corridor, and kind of access it at all areas along the corridor, and not just have large parking lots that don't really fit the intent of the smart code. Smart code is about, having energy and obviously in certain places, but the parking lots are bad. Any parking lot you wanna hide or you wanna do on-street parking. And so on the trailheads, we're wanting more parking to be along on-street parking instead of dedicating parking lots. And then also feel like some of the requirements we want to spread out and not have, it's not, I think it's 2 miles of river if it includes everything. And 4 big trailheads along that felt like a lot.
Doesn't general plan call for one every half mile?
We've made a general standard of 1 every mile. I originally said 1 every half mile because I can't hold it that long, but I think we decided on 1 every mile. But that's not written anywhere. The general plan shows 4 trailheads within range of this project. I could argue one of them is on the other side of the street that they don't know. And so, again, the general plan is not supposed to be exact, it's supposed to be general, and I try and do what we can to get what we can out of the developer who's standing in front of us, if we can get it, but I do agree with them. Some of the best open space corridors have a lot of activity that happens right next to it, including street parking. We would be looking for, I asked for the trailheads because the general plan says it, but if we were looking at onesie twosies, 20 lot or 20 acre subdivisions, that's what we would be looking at. All right. We don't know what actually is going to happen along this corridor. We don't know that there's going to be a road that's going to be able to provide parking. So developer, give us a trailhead. So I think we're okay with what they're suggesting. I do think we need to put some standards about how close parking can be, like along those streets, and how far apart bathrooms need to be. But if you've got,
based on Charlie's,
and based on my ability,
Based on Charlie's bladder.
and we time
Yes.
I think it might help to specify what we consider reasonable walking distance as well. Cause I agree, like you don't need them on there, and you're proposing 15 vehicles for a parking space, right? If I'm thinking about Riverdale, it's not right on the trail, it's within I don't know, 100 feet or something. I'm not saying it has to be within 100 feet, but I think we should specify, so it's not like, well, Jeff is fine walking that far, but Casey's fat.
Yeah.
He's not, right? Like that's not really, you gotta figure out what's reasonable.
And the other idea that we had, that we talked to Charlie about, more control finessing of the dock, is it doesn't necessarily need to be a trailhead per se. It could be an amphitheater that is an access point to the trail. Could be a gazebo, could be an area, a bunch of benches.
Could be a
Like,
Starbucks.
it's basically just like having defined access points with
Wait,
restaurant
yeah,
things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I agree with that, that's fine, I don't like parking stalls that are just there, it's the same thing with the big giant parks that's grass that doesn't ever get used except for once a week, right?
You got it.
Yeah, make it so it's versatile, that's fine.
So in that roadside parking, I'm presuming that's what we're talking about, roadside parking. 2 directions, 1 direction? Is this a one-way street around the river? I mean, or you have parking on both sides of the road?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know what they're gonna wanna design down there, but I think let's just put some standards in that make sense in terms of what the parking should be.
I would worry if it was like a Starbucks or some busy restaurant, just because then that restaurant's gonna be like, oh, these stupid bikers or trail people are not utilizing our business, but they're parking here and taking.
For the most part, they love that. That's traffic and that's Walden's.
Okay.
Now, sometimes they don't, but it depends on where they're located, whether it's in the inner city somewhere or if it's
Yeah.
on a high-end amenity like a nice trail like this. I was just on where was I? On the Gulf in Florida, and beachfront hotel with some commercial at the ground floor. And I asked, where's the nearest bathroom? Because, my bladder. And some guy said, well, you could do the shortcut and go to the Starbucks, or you can go to the city maintained facility that's twice as far. And we went to Starbucks, and I expected to have to get a code or, you know, get a key or whatever, and they're like, oh, no, go ahead. I always will buy something just because I think that's,
Paying for your services.
yeah, paying for their services.
Services that
But they like that kind of thing because people will go in
See,
and,
that's good to have that perspective, because I'm thinking Riverdale. And the closest businesses to that, which I use when I'm done with my bike ride or whatever, it's compact, it's congested, and it's really hard, so.
Yeah.
But again, the quarter in his back is, so you want it to be appealing to everybody, right? You don't want that congestion, you want it. So prove it to us.
that's right, I carry.
I would just say, I personally like trailheads to a certain extent because, I know in the Ogden Parkway, you think up along, by like the dinosaur park, and I call it the Rose Park. They're gathering places, and it's hard to gather if you don't have sufficient parking or facilities, and so I don't know about meaningless trailheads, but if you're going to have parks at a certain distance and they have a bathroom, and I've lived in California, and the idea of not building adequate parking, I know people get really excited about that, it just makes for a terrible quality of life, and there just isn't enough public transportation infrastructure to get away without having sufficient parking. So I get Long Street will have some, but if there's going to be an amphitheater, there needs to be parking, and I'm sure you understand that, but, so yeah, I understand if it's just 15 parking stalls, that's sufficient along the street, but if it's something that requires, like, you know, gathering, if there's, you know, parking commensurate with the facilities.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's sort of like, I think where you're gonna see in the development agreement where we push back a bit. Is rigid standards based on sort of precedent that's happened in the area versus incorporating the design, the smart code to really create those important public realms without creating an auto-centric place. I mean, what you're describing is everyone driving to a trailhead to go to an amphitheater versus the case studies of the amphitheater is actually, like Norton Commons, for example, there's not a parking lot for the amphitheater. It's all on-street parking.
And in a community where there are no babies and toddlers, that is fine. But once you have babies and toddlers, you can't just haul them. And in Utah, we have lots of babies and toddlers. And you need to be able to drive your car there. You can't buy a bunch of extra equipment, put them on your bike, and sometimes you don't want to be all sweaty. Sometimes there's mosquitoes out.
Yeah, that's gonna.
Yeah.
We know we're not looking like, you know, there's gonna be cars everywhere, so we have to accommodate the cars. I think that the intent is, we're not building this thing to house a bunch of cars, like, that's not the thing, it's, you wanna spread the cars out, so it doesn't feel like there's just cars.
Well, to make it accessible,
Yeah.
that's all you.
We want it to be successful, we want there to be parking, we just wanna be able to.
Why don't you guide them to 8.8.4.3.3?
Why don't you guide them there, Charlie, cause I can't repeat these.
I do. Everybody catch that? 8.8.4.3.3. Now, this isn't specifically about parking.
It's on 33.
39,
33.
33.
Pavilions. Pavilions?
Yeah, so there's restrooms in there, let's see. So we have two restrooms. Sorry, restrooms 1 up.
Page 33.
And that would be, if we have 2 miles, it's 1 mile. And then some sort of.
Okay.
So the intention of bringing you to this section here is, as you're thinking about parking trailheads versus what the amenity of this, because it's a park, it's a linear park, we don't want to just call it a trail. If you have consolidated trailheads here, even, 4 of them, you've got a lot of distance between those trailheads, whereas the amenities that are being provided in the park, it's spread out. And so I think we just want to make sure it's written in a way that says you need to provide enough parking within, that's where Casey said reasonable distance, yeah, but within so far from where that trail is, or where this bathroom is, or where the pavilion is, whether it's on street parking or off. I think that's key. Jeff was explaining that to me at first. My immediate reaction was, yeah, but that's if you live in the community. What about everyone else who's driving there to use your facility? Because we want this to be a community, regional facility. But I really like the explanation that Jeff gave. Like, if we've got a road that goes all along that river corridor, we're gonna have a ton of parking. Not to say there's gonna be a road exactly everywhere, but if you look at their master plan, they do show a road, generally speaking, that runs parallel to the river corridor.
Which would be sufficient for a lot of small facilities like we're talking about for trailheads, absolutely, yeah.
What's that, do we know what that total distance is from what you heard?
About 2.6 miles.
2.6
That
miles.
includes the gap that goes down on.
Yeah, sorry, that does include one gap.
Unless they're staying behind it, I can just keep moving down,
Yeah.
down the road.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because with Andrew doing that with this truck and trailers, is he gonna have sufficient restrooms? It's two enough.
I think, to Charlie's point, and as old as I'm getting, I think that we better tighten them up a little bit.
There's lots of trees too.
Yeah.
There's a river out there.
I can't even step outside of my tractor because anymore, pee like they used to.
That is important in West River County. I found that when someone was worried about the increased density. They were worried they couldn't pee off their front porch. I'm not kidding.
That doesn't count with a lot, actually.
I have to walk out back in the hay barn now.
Your neighbors complain.
I'm more of an outbacker.
Sound to the river.
Well, I think we've taken enough of your guys' time. I think we'll clean up some things, work with Charlie. I think the next iteration you'll have will be a clean copy, but it would be nice if there are anything in this development agreement that is glaring or stands out. Rewrite it.
When are we anticipating this again? What's our due date?
Yeah, so the first Tuesday in May, for those of you who will be here, we'll get all that information out to all of you, regardless of you're here or not. And then we hope to have it on for a hearing the week after that.
Brendan, did you?
What?
Did you have something?
No, Charlie took care of it. Email us out changes. It'll make.
Yes, before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Not the day of the meeting. Or is it?
Give us a chance to review,
So
or else we waste everybody's time.
I want to put a caveat to today's meeting. We had no intention of you getting into the development agreement. We wanted to talk about the other stuff, but you guys got through the other stuff pretty quick, so.
I mean, we could have home early.
Well, I mean, we didn't want to tell you.
I wish you'd set the agenda up a little bit.
Don't you think they sent me enough on my phone? I mean, I think I got a ream of paper here.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Expect a new version in about a week.
All right. Need a motion. This motion. My motion, need a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.